Good morning, everyone. I hope you're having a good morning and that our day is blessed, okay? Thank you for all the work you're doing. The prayer this morning is going to be offered by the delegate from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
If we may, assume the position that you feel best. Dear God, we bow in your presence on this Maryland Day, grateful for the promise of our past, the power of our progress, and the possibility of our future. Lord, we honor those who first set foot on this soil with faith and with fortitude, seeking freedom and forging a foundation that would become this great state. But God, we do not romanticize our history. We recognize it. For woven into Maryland's story is not only hope, but hardship, not only triumph, but trials. We remember the stain of slavery, the scars of segregation, the cruelty of Jim Crow, and the systemic struggles that sought to silence, suppress, and sideline your people. Yet even in the midst of misery, you gave us strength to stand, grace to grow, and faith to fight forward. And now, Lord, we stand as a state shaped by diverse dreams, defined by different dimensions, and driven by a dynamic diversity that is not our burden, but our blessing. Remind us that our diversity is our strength, not our stumbling block, our power, not our problem, our unity, not our undoing. Lord, we look beyond these walls to a world in turmoil, to tensions rising in Iran and unrest across the nations. Be present in the midst of our conflict and confusion, bring peace where there is pain and wisdom where there is weariness. And now, God, in this house, this hall of hope and heavy responsibility, remind us who we are. We're not just legislators, we are servants of the people, stewards of justice, and shapers of society. With only days remaining in this session, Lord, give us clarity in our calling, conviction in our choices, and courage in our conduct. Your word reminds us in Proverbs, where there is no vision, the people perish. So Lord, give us vision, vision to lead, vision to legislate, and vision to lift every community we serve. Let us be guided also by this truth. Do not judge each day by the harvest you reap, but by the seeds that you plant. And in these final days, Lord, help us to plant with purpose, to labor with integrity, and to finish with strength. Let every vote be principled, every debate be dignified, and every decision be directed by duty. And when this session comes to a close, let it be said that we stood strong, served selflessly, and delivered for the people of Maryland. We ask it all in your mighty and matchless name. Let us all say, amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. Quorum call.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk would take the call. I did not? Okay, can you please make sure I did it? I did not record my presence. Thank you. Has everyone, okay, so there being 100 and, with myself, 32 members present, the House is now in session. The clerk will read the journal from the previous day.
Annapolis, Maryland, March the 11th, 2026.
Recognizing the Deputy Majority Leader.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of the journal.
So order petitions, memorials, and other papers. So we have 3 resolutions today. The first one is going to be offered by the delegate from Baltimore County.
Good morning, body. Today, my seatmate and I have the pleasure and honor to recognize a constituent who has become a friend as she retires from state service. Tamara Kenneth Guntner has served a remarkable 33 years of service to the state of Maryland. Including 20 years with the Department of Human Services and 13 years with the Maryland Health Benefit Exchange. Today, we honor a leader whose unwavering commitment, strength, and compassion have transformed systems and changed lives. A tireless advocate for Marylanders, and one of the very best homeowner association presidents I've ever known. That's a tall order.
You're not biased.
A dedicated champion for Eastern Baltimore County, she broke down barriers, elevated access to critical services, and set a lasting standard of excellence in public service. Though this chapter closes, Tamara's work is not over. She remains committed to continuing her efforts to make Maryland a better place for all. Today, Tamara is joined by her husband, Shannon, and about 15 of her co-workers in the gallery, if you could stand.
You're not going to be.
Welcome. Congratulations, very deserving, and thank you for the casework you do. Often when we write, you reply when our constituents have issues, and we really appreciate you. I want you to know that, okay? Would the clerk please read the full resolution?
Be it hereby known to all that the House of Delegates of Maryland offers its sincerest congratulations to Tamara Kenneth Guntner in recognition of 33 years of faithful state service. Your strength, compassion, and leadership made Maryland stronger and better. The entire membership extends best wishes on this memorable occasion and directs this resolution to be presented on this 25th day of March 2026.
The second resolution, I'm recognizing the delegate from Anne Arundel County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
welcome.
Happy Maryland Day. I love the red.
Happy Maryland Day.
Body, this morning we have in our midst some legends. The South River High School won their first ever Class 3A boys basketball state championship on March 17th, defeating Magruder 67-50 at UMBC's Chesapeake Employees Insurance Arena. Jonah Hall scored 24 points to lead the Seahawks to victory, where they finished the season strong with a 21-7 record and a very impressive playoff run. This victory was part of a strong tournament by the Edgewater, Maryland-based team, securing their place in Anne Arundel County basketball lore. In the gallery, we have Tyler Suggs, Jamie Finn, Wes Miller, Jackson Suggs, Xander Dow, Ben Keith, Devin Johnson, Corey Warren, Jack McGrath, Stephen Carr, Cam Hatala, Henson Marson, Ben Harzak's on the roster, Jaden McDuffie, Jonah Hall, Nick Yoder, Hank Oxidine, and Coach Darren Hall, and all of the raving Seahawk fans.
Congratulations. We're so proud of you. They're up in the gallery right in front of me, and congratulations to both of you.
Madam
With a-
Speaker,
Yes.
permission to use delegate's name?
Permission granted.
On behalf of myself and Delegate Seth Howard, my seatmate, we just want to say congratulations and go Seahawks.
Congratulations. Would the clerk be so kind and read the entire resolution?
Be it hereby known to all that the House of Delegates of Maryland offers its sincerest congratulations to the South River High School boys basketball team in recognition of winning the Maryland High School State Championship for the first time in school history. The entire membership extends best wishes on this memorable occasion and directs this resolution to be presented on this 25th day of March 2026.
Welcome. Congratulations to all. The next resolution, I'd like to recognize the chair of the Ways and Means Committee.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Good morning, colleagues.
Morning.
Today on Maryland Day, I am proud to recognize and welcome Maryland's headquartered companies, businesses that are driving innovation, creating jobs, and strengthening our state's economy. These are the companies that invest in Maryland and call the Free State home. From Choice Hotels, headquartered in Montgomery County, to Under Armour in Charm City, these global leaders are our homegrown success stories, and these companies represent the strength and diversity of Maryland's business community. If our headquartered companies who are in the galleries can also please stand. They have chosen to grow and invest here, supporting thousands of employees and contributing to the economic vitality of every region of our state. The Maryland companies here today represent over 100,000 jobs in our state. Beyond their economic impact, Maryland headquartered companies are also community partners, supporting local organizations, workforce development efforts, and initiatives that improve quality of life for Marylanders. Their leadership helps ensure that Maryland remains a competitive and dynamic place to live, work, and do business. We thank them for their continued investment, leadership, and lasting contributions to our state's economy and communities, and the Maryland Chamber of Commerce for gathering our headquartered businesses today. Please join me, colleagues, in recognizing these outstanding Maryland-based companies.
Congratulations. Thank you for investing in Maryland. Would the clerk be so kind and read the resolution, please?
Be it hereby known to all that the House of Delegates of Maryland offers its sincerest congratulations to Maryland's headquartered companies in recognition of driving innovation, leadership, and lasting contributions to our state's economy and communities. The entire membership extends best wishes on this memorable occasion and directs this resolution to be presented on this 25th day of March 2026.
Message from the Senate. Senate bills introduced in the House. The clerk will read the bills and committee assignments.
Senate Bill 4, Senator Kagan, House Rules. Senate Bill 769, Chair, Senate Budget and Taxation Committee, House Rules. Senate Bill 947, Senator McRae, House Rules by Sylvia Seeger, Chief Clerk.
Today we have a couple of bills, and we have the budget as well. I want to set the tone, and I want to make sure that the tone is as it's been the entire session, which I'm so grateful. And it reflects so beautifully for the people in Maryland, for our families, for it to be respectful, very respectful, because a lot of work went into it. A lot of meetings and a lot of important decisions. So when we get up on the floor, let's just treat each other like we would treat the person that we love the most, all right? And I thank you ahead of time. The report of the Committee on Government, Labor, and Elections. It is report number 28. The clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 5, General Assembly, special election to fill a vacancy in office. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader, the gentleman from Frederick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and
You're
good
welcome.
morning. So much be considered the reading of the amendments.
Good morning. So order.
Thank you. The amendments clarify that certain requirements in the Maryland Constitution apply only to districts for the election of members of the Senate of Maryland and the House of Delegates, and authorize the General Assembly to grant original jurisdiction to the Supreme Court of Maryland to review the congressional districting of the state. Please move the amendments, Madam Speaker.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Recognizing the minority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
If my friend from Frederick County would entertain a question. The amendment that you just talked about, that's not about special elections to fill a vacancy to the General Assembly, which the bill was. You and I used to sit next to each other on Ways and Means, and we heard this bill several times over the years. The amendment that you mentioned doesn't talk anything about how we would regulate or govern special elections to fill a legislative vacancy to the General Assembly. Is that fair?
It's correct that that's true. It is under the same article, though.
Okay, it's under the same article, but it relates to something completely different than special elections to fill a General Assembly vacancy. We're not imposing new standards on that. We're not creating original jurisdiction for the Supreme Court to decide special election disputes about the General Assembly elections.
Yeah, we're clarifying language that needed to be clarified inside of the article, which fits nicely inside of this.
Would you mind if I special ordered that until, for purposes of amendment, until the appropriate session tomorrow? Because that's obviously sort of something that wasn't done in the Senate, wasn't discussed in the Senate. Did that have a subcommittee hearing in the GLEE committee?
The bill did not have a subcommittee hearing.
Okay, can I special order that until tomorrow?
Yes.
Thank you, I appreciate the courtesy.
Thank you very much.
So the question before the House is to special order Senate Bill 5. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 5 has been special ordered until the appropriate time tomorrow. What I will ask respectfully of everyone is that you have any concerns, if you have any possible amendments, will you be so kind and give the floor leader and the chair of the committee the courtesy tonight? Even if you do not have the amendment in writing, you do have it conceptually in your mind. If you would be so kind and just disclose it. Thank you very much. And that goes for any other bills that are held. For the budget, the reprint is in the floor system. And it's under menu. Look at the budget links and then operating. The options are listed there. So those of you that like to use the computer, again, it's in the floor system. Look on the menu, then budget links, then operating. Okay, it's all listed there. We're going to start with a special order calendar.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. All my questions have been answered.
All right.
Madam Speaker, members of the House, the Appropriations Committee recommends 56 amendments to the budget. These amendments are indicated in the committee reprint of the committee report and shared on Monday. The budget is linked to Senate Bill 284. The budget.
One second. Let me call the bill.
I'm sorry.
So the clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 282, Budget Bill, Fiscal Year 2027. Favor of amendment.
All
Amendment
right.
number 1.
I'm recognizing the chair of the committee.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So order.
All right. As I said on Monday, our budget plan is balanced without increasing taxes or fees and leaves a cash surplus of over $280 million, which is significantly higher than the typical cash surplus goal of $100 million. We're also leaving more than $2 billion in our rainy day fund. There's a lot to be proud of in this budget. Continued investments in our education system and childcare industry, funding to strengthen our economy, create jobs, and support our state employee workforce, efforts to lower energy bills and make Maryland more affordable for families, and support for our most vulnerable communities by providing health care coverage and food assistance for those in need, especially as the federal government cuts Medicaid, SNAP, and other important programs. This budget reflects the committee's hard work in partnership with the Senate and the administration to protect our state's key programs while ensuring a responsible budget that prepares for our future. I will now turn to the committee amendments. I will introduce the amendments in groups, and after describing the amendments, I will then move for each group to be adopted. If any member has concerns about the specific amendment, please ask to have that amendment separated for debate. As in the past, I ask members to hold additional amendments until after the committee amendments have been considered. Please keep in mind the amendments must be drawn to the committee reprint. Staff in the amendment office is available to assist you. With your permission, Madam Speaker, I will now turn to the committee amendments.
Granted.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Amendments 1 through 7 pertain to the Judiciary, the Office of Public Defender, the Office of the Attorney General, the Public Service Commission, and the Uninsured Employers Fund. In the Judiciary, Amendment 1 restores funds for new positions. Amendment 2 partially restores funds. Amendment 3 further reduces funds. In the Office of the Public Defender, Amendment 4 restores funds. In the Office of the Attorney General, Amendment 5 restores funds. In the Public Service Commission, Amendment 6 restores funds. In the Uninsured Employers Fund, Amendment 7 increases the amount of funds restricted pending a report and modifies reporting requirements. Madam Speaker, move for the adoption of Amendments 1 through 7.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments 1 through 7. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker.
You missed it.
We're
Going to separate? Okay, recognizing the minority whip.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If it pleases you, I'd like to separate Amendment 5 for discussion.
Madam Speaker, I move the adoption of Amendments 1 through 4.
Okay. So the question before the House is the adoption of the amendments 1 through 4. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The question now is the adoption of the paperwork report as amended. Oh, no? Okay. You need to offer the amendment for number 5.
I think he's just
Yeah.
debating 5 and whether we adopt 5 or not, Madam Speaker.
So if I could ask you're up, so appreciate you being up. So we were reading through all several hundred pages yesterday, and Amendment number 5 caught my eye. Can you elaborate on why we would do that?
No, I think it's great, and thank you so much for the opportunity to get up and talk about the Trump administration. I always welcome that on the floor. Amendment number 5 asks for a report from the AG's office on what they are doing to combat the very negative actions of the Trump administration. The Senate added this. We did strike it thinking that we didn't need a report, that we were happy to continue to work with them. But honestly, as I've looked at this and thought about it, I do think a report might be helpful to combat some of the really terrible things that the Trump administration is doing and some of the great things the Attorney General is doing on tariffs, suing the federal government on, for goodness sakes, ICE, just putting burdens on our community in that regard, illegal wars, unjust and illegal firing. These are things that the Attorney General is tackling, and actually we gave money last year to the Attorney General to do it. We're hoping that the Attorney General continues that work. This amendment actually says improve the unit's efficiency and operations in this regard. So look, I intend to restore this in conference. If you would like to do it now, that's fine. I thank you for joining me in the support on the Attorney General and fighting the Trump administration.
Okay. Feel better?
I do.
Okay. All right. So, folks, the reason why I wanted to address this is I was elected by Marylanders to focus on doing what's best for Maryland. And every day I wake up, I see that our Attorney General, using Maryland taxpayer dollars, is just suing the federal government every single day. I'm not so sure he's focused on so much on what's happening in Maryland as he is obsessed with what's going on in D.C. I'm not running for Congress. I'm not running for the President of the United States. I'm just focusing on trying to make Maryland more affordable, more accountable, and safer. And so I think it would be helpful if we knew why the Attorney General is constantly suing everybody and focused on everything outside of Maryland. And what appeared to be there was a report that the AG's office was to provide the rest of us so we can see what the motivations were behind all this suing everybody else except focusing on what's happening in Maryland. So I think a report on that would certainly be helpful. I thought I heard the committee chair would be open to restoring that part. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, no, I think suing the Trump administration does make Maryland more affordable, more accountable, and safer. So I think that is within the charge of the Attorney General. If you read this report, it actually, I'm surprised that we agree on this because it says, tell us how we can improve the unit's efficiency and operations on suing the Trump administration. Tell us how we can improve the efficiency and operations on suing the Trump administration. We were just going to ask the Attorney General how we could do that without a report. If you would like a report on that, and that's what I'm hearing, then we are happy to ask a red vote here on Committee Amendment 5, if that's what you'd like.
So, and thank you for that clarification. And I'll just tell you this. I'm all about transparency. Transparency is what this is really about. We want to know why the Attorney General is spending millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of our dollars focused on the federal government, and maybe instead of focusing on what's happening here in Maryland. So I think transparency on all sides, whether you agree with the floor leader on his speech he just gave, or whether you just believe that when it comes to Maryland taxpayer dollars, there needs to be transparency, there needs to be accountability. We need to know what the AG is doing. Again, I wake up every single day and see that he's suing somebody. So it'd be helpful to know why and whose money he's using. So yeah, I think a red vote on Amendment 5, I'll be supporting. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
So the question before the House?
Madam Speaker.
Oh, 1 second.
Can we just, so I'm hearing from DLS that maybe we have the wrong amendment, but the gentleman has my word in conference, we'll restore this. Let's just stick with the committee here, a green vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, what?
Do you have to wait for me to recognize you?
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the minority whip.
Sure. Well, listen, after that speech he gave, I'm going to say everybody should put a red vote on Amendment number 5. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
All right. So the question before the House is the adoption of Amendment number 5. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. You're not supported. The amendment. It was only 3 people. Okay? There was only 3 people.
Madam Speaker.
So the amendment is adopted.
Adopted, yep.
Okay.
And again, sir, we will adopt that in conference. That's just committee narrative, so we will adopt it. And thank you for bringing it to our attention. Move for Amendments 6 and 7.
The question before the House is the adoption of Amendments 6 and 7. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted.
Madam Speaker, Amendments 8 through 17 to pertain to the Office of Deaf and Hard of Hearing, the Governor's Office of Children, the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention and Policy, the Department of Aging, the Maryland Stadium Authority, and the Department of Planning. In the Office of Deaf and Hard of Hearing, Amendments 8 and 9 strike language restricting funds. Amendment 10 restores funds and a position in the Governor's Office for Children. Amendment 11 reduces funds in the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention and Policy. Amendment 12 adds language expressing intent, and Amendment 13 adds language restricting funds. In the Maryland Department of Aging, Amendment 14 adds language specifying a distribution of funds. In the Maryland Stadium Authority, Amendment 15 reduces funds. In the Department of Planning, Amendment 16 modifies reporting requirement, and Amendment 17 restricts funds pending the submission of a report. Move the adoption of Amendments 8 through 17.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments 8 through 17. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. Recognizing the floor leader, the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Turning to Amendments 18 through 29, they pertain to the Military Department, the Office of Emergency Management, the Office of Correctional Ombudsman, the Department of Budget and Management, the Department of Service and Civic Innovation, the Maryland Department of Transportation, the Department of Natural Resources, and the Maryland Department of Agriculture. In the Military Department, Amendment 18 increases the amount of funds restricted pending a report. In the Maryland Department of Emergency Management, Amendment 19 restores funding for a new position. In the Office of Correctional Ombudsman, Amendment 20 adds language restricting funds pending the submission of a report in the Department of Budget and Management. Amendment 21 strikes language restricting funds pending the submission of a report. In the Department of Service and Civic Innovation, Amendment 22 and 23 reduce funds for grants and new positions. In the Maryland Department of Transportation, Amendments 24 strikes language restricting funds, and Amendments 25 and 26 add language restricting funds pending submission of reports. The Department of Natural Resources, Amendment 27 strikes language restricting funds pending submission of a letter. In the Department of Agriculture, Amendment 28 increases the amount of funds restricted. Amendment 29 partially restores funds. Move the adoption of Amendments 18 through 29.
The question before the House is the adoption of amendments 18 through 29. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. Recognizing the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Turning now to Amendments 30 through 38.
Thank you.
They pertain to the Maryland Department of Health, the Department of Human Services, and the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services. In the Maryland Department of Health, Amendment 30 modifies language to alter reporting requirements. Amendment 31 and 32 add language related to the cost containment actions. And Amendment 33 increases the amount of funds restricted pending a report. Department of Human Services, Amendment 34 to 36 restore funding, and Amendment 37 increases the amount of funds restricted pending a report. The Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, Amendment 38 adds language restricting funds pending submission of a letter. Move the adoption of Amendments 30 through 38.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments 30 to 38. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. Recognizing the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Amendment 39 through 48 pertain to the Maryland State Department of Education, the Maryland Higher Education Commission, the Department of Commerce, the Maryland Technology Development Corporation, the Maryland Department of the Environment, the Department of State Police, and the State Reserve Fund. In the Maryland State Department of Education, Amendment 39 adds language restricting funds to their intended purpose, and Amendment 40 strikes language expressing intent. In the Higher Ed Commission, Amendment 41 increases the amount of funds restricted pending a report. Amendment 42 restores funds in the Department of Commerce. Amendment 43 adds language to reduce the general funds contingent on legislation, and Amendment 44 restores funding. In Medco, Amendment 45 reduces funds. In the Maryland Department of Environment, Amendment 46 reduces the amount of funds restricted pending a report. In the Department of State Police, Amendment 47 adds language expressing intent. And the Sunny Day Fund, Amendment 48 reduces funds. Move the adoption of Amendments 39 through 48.
The question before the House is the adoption of the committee amendments 39 through 48. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. Recognizing the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Amendments
welcome.
49 through 56 pertain to the deficiency appropriations and back of the bill sections. In the Office of Public Defender, Amendment 49 restores funds. In the Department of Human Services, Amendments 50 and 51 restore funds. Amendments 52 adds funds in fiscal 27 and a reporting requirement. Amendment 53 strikes a section restricting funds pending the submission of a report. Amendment 54 adds a section restricting funds pending a report. Amendment 55 adds a section authorizing a budget amendment. Amendment 56 is technical. Madam Speaker, move the adoption of 49 through 56.
The question before the House is the adoption of the committee amendments 49 to 56. All in favor signify by saying aye. No, opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. Recognizing the committee chair.
Move the adoption of the committee report.
The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Recognizing the minority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have an
My
amendment
pleasure.
to desk 573227/1.
Number 1.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So order.
Thank you. This amendment, I believe, hopefully is going to be adopted and accepted in collaboration with the Appropriations Committee leadership. And it addresses an issue that all of us as legislators should be concerned about. There's been an increased amount of investigation and reporting and bringing to public light nonprofit organizations, which many nonprofit organizations perform wonderful services to our citizens and our constituents. Many of them are run very well. But as always, there are bad actors and there are individuals who are recipients of government funds that are not doing the right things, and we're having a difficult time tracking that. What the amendment would do is for a nonprofit organization receiving grants from state agencies or state institutions of higher education, the nonprofit organization would have to provide proof, evidence that it is properly certified, that it is operating correctly. Sometimes these certifications fall out of order because they don't file tax returns or because they have problems with other legal requirements to maintain their status at the time of the grant, also at the time that they enter into contracts to extend the grant and during a one-year period during those operations. It's language that has been worked up collaboratively. I thank the Appropriations Chair for working on this issue with us, and it would be language that I think would be both a guardrail for the provision of government funds to these nonprofits, and also would increase transparency and make sure that if you're taking government money to provide a charitable purpose, you're doing it in the right way, you're certified, and you're up to date with everything that we require you. And subject to the committee's perspective, we would move the amendment.
Recognizing the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And
You're
I
welcome.
would, in kind, like to thank the minority leader. I know a similar amendment was offered on the Senate floor that was rejected. So thank you for bringing this to us early, working with the Department of Legislative Services to get the wording right. I do think this amendment reflects the mandate from our speaker this year on accountability. I think it supports the work done by GLEE and by the Joint Audits Committee and the great work that they've done, and also work by the Budget Committee on budget language to make sure we're doing as much accountability as possible. With that, I think this does help that process, and this will be a friendly amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move the amendment.
So the question before the House is, thank you for working it out. Really appreciate it. The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Recognizing the gentleman from the Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have an amendment at the desk, amendment number 853-9271.
Amendment number 1.
Thank you. So much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So order.
So what this amendment does, hopefully we have the same success as my friend from Western Maryland. What were your words to my neighbor? A simple, common sense amendment that I think you all like and hopefully vote for. So this will restore the tourism budget. Last year in the budget, we took a little bit over $3 million out of the budget for tourism. And I've got to tell you, it's had a big impact, and unfortunately not anything that's good news for us. The tourism really can help fill the deficit we have in the budget. Tourism is a growth strategy for the state of Maryland. Many years ago, I worked in sales and pharmaceutical sales, and one of the companies I worked for was struggling financially. And the last thing they did, in fact, they never did, was cut the sales force. The sales force is what keeps bringing money back to the company. And in our case, the sales force is what keeps bringing money back to the state of Maryland. In 2024, visitor spending generated over $1.4 billion in state tax revenue. The 78% of Maryland visitors are leisure travelers that are very active to our advertising. Visitor spending begins to hit Maryland cash registers 60 to 90 days after an ad campaign is launched. So we cut $3 million last year. At the last Maryland Tourism Development Board meeting, the chair, Ben Seidel, he reported that Maryland is down over 1 million hotel room nights so far this year, and that was a little while ago. So he sent me the latest report, and I can tell you, occupancy is down, average daily rate is down, and the revenue per available room is down. Maryland tourism, when we look at what we were spending before the cut, I went back to 2025 when Maryland was spending $12.9 million on ad campaigns. Looking at our neighboring states, Pennsylvania was almost double us. West Virginia, the little state we hear about so often from our minority leader, spends just under $30 million. New Jersey over $22 million, Virginia $19 million, and Washington, D.C. over $24 million, just about double what we spend. Since we made that cut, 2026, Maryland is under $10 million in money available for ad campaigns. The town of Ocean City, that tiny little area that's just one small part of my district, spends over $11 million in advertising. So the town of Ocean City is spending more money than the state of Maryland in advertising. Think about that, folks. And the big thing is, tourism is not just something that feeds the coffers of the state budget. It impacts all of our county budgets as well. I won't go into too much detail, but 3 counties that make up Western Maryland, the room tax alone, that's just one part of it. Room tax alone for those 3 Western Maryland counties was in 2025 $11.5 million. To the folks Frederick, Montgomery, and Prince George's, the capital region, there was over $63 million to the county budgets. So we're not only creating problems at the state level, but it's at the county level. And, the list goes on and on. So, Madam Speaker, this $3 million that we tried to save during Maryland's tough economic times are really exacerbating the problem that we're having. And I would ask for a green vote to restore the green to the tourism budget, and let's start making tourism work for the state of Maryland and all of our counties. I ask you to move the amendment, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
You're welcome. Recognizing the floor leader from Baltimore City.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
And thank you, friend, for not only offering the amendment, but getting it to us in advance. I have good news and I have bad news. Let's start with the bad news. The bad news is we will not be accepting this as a friendly amendment, and we were asking the body to resist the amendment for the foregoing reasons. One, the fund that this amendment proposes to transfer the tourism outreach to get that tourism outreach money from, it's the Economic Development Opportunities Program account, more popularly discussed as the Sunny Day Fund. You may have heard it referred to as that. The House version of this budget actually already aggressively cuts the Sunny Day Fund because of its underutilization over the past decade, and so further encroachment by this amendment would render it almost non-existent. And so I do have great sympathies for what you've outlined. Tourism is an important part of our economy, but there is a lot of national pressure around tourism as people are facing economic instability, as people are seeing increases in gas prices. That also has a depressing impact on tourism. And so while we wish we could restore this funding to fiscal 26 and before levels, we are still in a time of cost containment and having to be really responsible to ensure that we deliver the balanced budget that we're required to under the Constitution. So I thank you for your amendment. I would love to work with you in the interim on ways that we can think about how we can provide more support here, but I will ask the body vigorously, mightily, and with great intention to resist this amendment.
Recognizing the maker of the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
We heard the numbers, over 1 million hotel room nights already. I don't think we can afford to wait another year on this. So if the fund that we're looking at has already been utilized for other amendments that were passed, then maybe we could talk about the rainy day fund or something. If we're serious about fixing this and all the reasons you outlined as to, the reasons why we need to work on this in the future, if we can take some time, get this done for this year, I think it would be a great move for all Marylanders. So I asked you to, somehow find out how we can work this out and make it happen for the state of Maryland.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? The clerk will take the call. There being 97 votes in the negative, the amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. I want to thank everyone for a very civil discussion. Senate Special Order Calendar, Senate Bill 284. The clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 284, Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act of 2026. Favorable report is amended and adopted.
Recognizing the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much to be
You're
considered the
welcome.
reading of the amendments.
So order.
Madam Speaker, I would like to now turn to the amendments on the BRFA that have been adopted by the Appropriations Committee. I will introduce the amendments to Senate Bill 284 in groups. After describing the amendments, I will move each group to be adopted. I ask members to hold any additional amendments until after the committee amendments have been considered and adopted. I would like to note that the amendments to the BRFA implement the committee's actions on the budget. With your permission, Madam Speaker, let me turn to the BRFA amendments.
Granted. Thank you.
Amendments 1 and 4 are technical. Amendment 2 strikes a provision. Amendments 1 and 4 are technical. Amendment 2 strikes a provision that would have required a local cost share beginning in fiscal 28. Amendment 3 modifies the participation targets in the Young Adult Service Year Pathway. Move adoptions of Amendments 1 through 4.
The question before the House is the adoption of amendments 1 through 4. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. Recognizing the committee chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Amendment
You're
5
welcome.
restores a provision that eliminates a mandated distribution. Amendment 6 adds a provision to cap the aggregate amount of final certifications that may be issued under the More Jobs for Maryland's program, prohibits claiming of tax credits under a certain date, and alters how transfers occur after the tax credits are claimed. Amendment 7 strikes a provision that would have modified the definition of historic vehicles. Move adoptions 5 through 7.
The question before the House is the adoption of committee amendments 5 through 7. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. Recognizing the committee chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move for
You're
the adoption
welcome.
of the committee report.
Okay. All right. So the 1 minute.
Yep.
The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title?
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the delegate from Cecil County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
welcome.
And happy Maryland Day to this body.
Thank you.
I do have an amendment at the desk. The amendment number is 823321-1.
Amendment number 1.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So order.
I rise today to offer what I'm going to refer to as the Back to the Future Amendment. And the reason I make that reference is because this deals with transportation and our automobiles, but at the same time, this is a prospective amendment that basically rolls back the fees that we all pay starting in July 1, 2027, back to where they were before we did all of these raises. This is a very substantive amendment. I'm going to try to hold this up with one hand. This is the copies of the amendment, okay? And I think this is important because I'm going to showcase how many fees we raised in last year's session. For a Class A, this would roll them back from $80.50 to $50.50. If you're over 3,700 GVW, it goes from $151.50 to $76.50. For Class B, it goes from $180 back to $150. For Class C, it goes from $130 to $100. Class D, it goes from $65 to $35. Class E, $75 down to $63.75. And if you're a dump truck, from $10.80 down to $10.50. For Class F, it goes back from $154 to $124. For Class H, which is school buses, $81 to $51. $170 to $150 for non-school buses. And $81 to $51 for all other coaches. For Class J, it goes from $106 to $76. For historic tags, we go from $55 down to $25. For Class M, it goes from $80 to $50. And $151 to $76. I know we have some moped advocates here in the body. They'll be interested in that. For street rods, it goes from $55 to $25. And for Class Q, which is limos, it goes from $215 down to $185. Now, why did I read all those off? every single tag for every single transportation device, whether you're going to work, whether you're riding in your limo, whether you're going to see your family. If you use transportation, if you own a vehicle or ride in a vehicle, your fees got raised, and in some cases, over 100%. That's significant. That touches every single person in this state. At a time when gas prices are spiraling out of control, when folks are struggling to make ends meet, they can't even afford to go to their places of employment if they're using an automobile or a bus or a coach or a van or a moped. I know that this hasn't been scored, and that's just a limitation of bill drafting and what we're working on here. But this is a significant amendment, and I'm asking for the body to pass a green vote on this to give a little bit of relief to our taxpayers and allow for these to roll back to where they were previous to raising them. So with that, I move the amendment.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you for that amendment, and thank you for getting it to us ahead of time. That amendment basically would cost the state and the Transportation Trust Fund $250 million a year. And that is money that we very carefully debated last year when we did increase the fees, to fill the coffers of the Transportation Trust Fund, because the gas tax is a declining source of revenue, now less than 50% of the trust fund. So in order to have roads without potholes, safe bridges, reliable transit, and not going back to the future, but to get to the future of these good transportation systems, we need to reject this amendment and keep the increases in place so that we can do the responsible thing for our citizens in providing them safe transportation options. I ask the body to resist the amendment.
Recognizing the minority whip.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
It's a great amendment, right? Affordability, we all said it. Everybody was pumping that phrase out at the beginning of session. Every single Maryland family in the mail or via email got a bill this year. That was double what the bill was last year. Hundreds of dollars more. If you're a hardworking, lower middle class family in Maryland and you have 2 kids that have 2 cars, their fees went up too. Hundreds and hundreds of dollars. The entire energy debate, we saved $12.50. This amendment saves hundreds of dollars to the average hardworking, lower middle class and lower class family in Maryland. And by the way, it's not just Republicans who get this bill in the mail. It's Democrats and independents too. We ought to be doing what we can to save Marylanders money. This is real money. And I got to tell you, this is the thing that the average Marylander hates the most. Go ask your constituents when you're door knocking, hey, did you guys get your registration bill in the mail? How does that make you feel? Well, I got to tell you, universally pissed off, right? Excuse my language, Madam Speaker. But this is something we should do. We could do it right now. Let's save Marylanders real money, tangible real money, hundreds of dollars. They will love you for it. They'll love you for it. Let's do it. Let's put a green vote on this board for affordability, Republicans and Democrats working together to make Maryland a better state to live in. Vote green on this. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Ladies and
You're
gentlemen,
welcome.
it's not affordability when your car is in the shop and you're paying repairs because your roads are in disrepair. It's not affordability when single moms like my mom, who I remember picking me up late from daycare because they're stuck in traffic and they have to pay that late fee that she couldn't afford. These are not affordability, ladies and gentlemen. What is affordable is when we get businesses to move to this state and we have more jobs, better incomes, because we have a good functioning transportation system. For these reasons, I ask that you resist this amendment.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Madam Speaker, explain my vote.
Recognizing the maker of the amendment, the gentleman from Cecil County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
This is a significant issue. We wonder why we're having folks register their vehicles out of state in Virginia and try to skirt the laws. We wonder why people are getting pulled over and getting ticketing, have to go to court and losing their license because they can't pay for that little sticker that goes on the tag of their vehicle. We've all seen it, people with expired tags, expired registration running around. We wonder why we're taking $150 million of the $250 that was just described and sending it to WMATA. Okay? That's why I'm putting up a green vote on this amendment. Our folks need some relief. This is something that everyone has to pay via 1 or 2 years. And I know families that are only renewing their vehicle and sometimes late for 1 year because that's all they can afford. We're having to do payment plans for vehicle registration. Please put up a green vote. Let's get some relief now to our taxpayers. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
So, has everyone recorded their vote? The clerk will take the call. There being 86 votes in the negative, the amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Recognizing the delegate from Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
I have an amendment at the desk. It is amendment number 173922/1.
Amendment number 1.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So order.
So this amendment would strike language that would cut state share of K through 12 teachers, librarians, and community college faculty retirement. So just to give you a little background, for years in Maryland, the state has honored its commitment to fully fund the retirement cost of our K through 12 teachers, librarians, and community college faculty, covering 100% of the employer pension contributions. But this proposal walks that back. This is not real savings, it's a cost shift. Instead of the state practicing fiscal responsibility, these growing costs are now being pushed off to local governments and community colleges. And those costs will not stay flat. They will increase every year, which means that counties, schools, and colleges will be forced to make tough decisions by raising tuition, cutting programs, reducing staff, or go back to taxpayers for more funding. That directly contradicts everything we say here about affordability. You cannot claim to support students and families while advancing a budget that leads to higher tuition, fewer resources, and greater financial pressure on local jurisdictions. And what makes this even more frustrating is that the shift is not necessary. We do not have to balance the budget this way. The state has the ability to draw down the fund balance rather than offloading these obligations onto the counties. County leaders across Maryland, along with MACO and numerous advocacy and lobbyist organizations, have raised serious concerns and clear opposition to this decision. They understand exactly what this policy does, and it shifts growing costs from the state onto counties that are already managing tight budgets. This is not a sustainable solution. It places additional strain on counties and ultimately onto all of our constituents. Madam Speaker, I move the amendment.
Recognizing the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I love that what I'm hearing. There's like a trend today that cutting fund balance is somehow viewed as fiscally responsible. Think about this. Let's cut the fund balance and that'll be fiscally responsible. No, I think having a healthy fund balance is fiscally responsible. As to this particular action, let's remind ourselves what we're actually doing here. We are keeping our responsibility. The state share of local employees' retirement goes from 74% to 72%. What that means is the state is still picking up 72% of this share. What we've done here is just moved half of the increase in normal cost this year. That's it. And the recommendation was to cut it by $80 million. Well, we didn't do that. We took a measured approach and cut it by half that amount. The committee did not take the full $80 million cut. They took half of that. Yes, we're asking our locals to share in some of the cuts that we have also sustained as a state. But I thank the Madam Delegate for her amendment because it gives me a chance to talk more about locals and some of the great stuff we did do for locals, including a rejection of a local cut that would have come in disparity grant. And I think this is important, especially for some of our minority sort of red counties, right? Certainly I have a parochial interest in this. This restores money for Prince George's. But the disparity grant rejection of the cut restores money for Caroline County of $850,000. Now, some of you from big counties might not think $850,000 is a big deal, but trust me, the folks who represent Caroline County know $850,000 is a big deal. We restored money for Dorchester County, $670,000. We restored money for Garrett County, $80,000. We restored money for Somerset County, $762,000. Washington County, $316,000. Wacomico County, $500,000. And let's not forget the Minorities Leaders Own Allegheny County, where we restored $6 million in local cuts. So we have taken a measured approach in how we ask our locals to share in these times. I ask the committee to resist the amendment.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? The clerk will take the call. There being 94 votes in the negative, the amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Recognizing the gentleman from Cecil and Hartford County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have an
You're
amendment
welcome.
on the desk. 413129-1.
Amendment number 1.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, unfortunately, my speech today will not be as short as my previous 2 speeches, so just prepare you for that. What my amendment seeks to do is strike the language in the BRFA that would take away local law enforcement's funding if they continue to have any type of 287G agreements or agreements with ICE. I do have a quick question for the floor leader, please.
Floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Good morning.
Just 3 quick questions. One, can you tell me exactly what that language in the BRFA does?
So the language that you're referring to in the BRFA ensures that local law enforcement agencies are both listening to as well as implementing the laws that we pass here in the General Assembly with respect to immigration.
Now, do you know how much, to start with, Hartford County stands to lose as a result of this amendment?
I assume you're going to tell me, Delegate?
Just over $4 million. Do you know how much law enforcement agencies across the state stand to lose as a result of this amendment?
0.
Well, according to Department of Legislative Services, the state stands to lose $124 million for noncompliance.
Well, Delegate,
as a result
if
of this bill,
yeah,
of this amendment.
Yeah, Delegate, if local authorities, if local law enforcement agencies comply with the legislation, the laws that we pass here, consistent with previous years, this is not new. None of this is off of the table. They do not forfeit. They won't lose out on anything. It's a very simple language in the bill that, just asks local law enforcement to enforce what we do.
I appreciate that. Madam Speaker, on the amendment.
Yes.
So I know this is a very hot topic, very personal for a lot of folks, and I respect that. We all have things that are important to us and matter to us. Hartford County has seen 2 significant tragedies with Kayla Hamilton and Rachel Morin that has really had some significant impacts on our community. What's made our community feel safer is the 287G program. And it's not only made community for citizens feel safer, but has made the community for non-citizens feel safer in Hartford County, because it was actually the non-citizens in Hartford County that played a very vital role in bringing Rachel Morin's murder to justice. Their cooperation, their collaboration with the Hartford County Sheriff's Office, helping to identify this individual, right? Because they knew Hartford County Sheriff's Office wasn't going into these communities and trying to prosecute non-citizens who were following state and local laws. Unfortunately, during the 287G debate, I brought up the fact that one of my biggest concerns about ending this program would be that ICE would now feel the need to go into immigrant communities and start going after folks so they can no longer be able to detain at the jails. And unfortunately, that's precisely what happened. 2 weeks ago, for the first time in 10 years, ICE notified Hartford County Sheriff's Office that they are going into Hartford County communities, Edgewood to be very specific, and start placing detainers and individuals in the community. And I know one of the things that a lot of folks in this body have spoke about is their concern with collateral deportations. When they're going after the bad guys, that we all agree we want the worst offenders, citizen or non-citizen, to be brought to justice. But now we're starting to see collateral deportations, because when they go into a community to identify somebody who is an offender, who's committed crimes, that typically they would be able to detain at the detention center, now they're unfortunately starting to deport other folks who never would have got caught up with ICE, but for the prohibition on the 287G program. So these are the unintended consequences we had spoke about that are now happening in communities like Edgewood in Harford County. One of the communities I grew up in, lived in Harford Square, right there in the middle of Edgewood, and in one of the poorest areas of Harford County. So that is the concern. Furthermore, it's even the debate on the validity of being able to repeal or try to prohibit the 287G program. Because these law enforcement officers, and again, the merits of federal immigration laws, the merits on what law enforcement's role is, that's a whole different conversation. But law enforcement's been sworn to uphold the laws of the Constitution. You know, following the 287G program, cooperating with ICE to make sure our most violent and egregious criminals are taken out of the communities. And these individuals, as the immigrant communities in Harford County have shared, they menace the immigrant communities more than anybody else, right? And that is the greatest concern with this. And now we're threatening local law enforcement, you know, by taking away their dollars, by continuing to cooperate to make sure these violent offenders are taken out of the community. And again, the unintended consequences that are happening on our immigrant communities in counties like Harford that have started since this bill's been passed, I don't think anybody wants that. So with that, Madam Speaker, I would move the amendment.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I want to thank the maker of the amendment for the opportunity to discuss his amendment in advance. We were very clear here in the General Assembly when we passed legislation such as dignity not detention, as well as a ban on 287G agreements, because we understand that local law enforcement are not federal immigration agents, and it is their responsibility to focus on public safety in our communities and not to be complicit in what we are seeing right now happening all across our country. And that is ICE, an agency with a slush fund of $70+ billion, terrorizing our communities, killing Americans, and doing so with impunity. And so this General Assembly, this majority party, in its wisdom, decided to pass legislation this year ending 287G agreements. And I was not just proud to vote for that, but I recognize that public safety is about trust. And if we cannot have local law enforcement focusing on their primary job, which is keeping our communities safe, it fractures that trust. And so that's why we passed the ban on 287G. And the laws that we pass here in this House, in this General Assembly, is not optional. You don't get to elect when to enforce the law or pick and choose what laws you like and what laws you don't. The legislative branch has authority, and we've made it very clear in the laws that we pass that we expect local law enforcement to do exactly that. And so this amendment, which I urge you to reject, would essentially allow local law enforcement to choose what laws that they get to uphold. And I'll also add that no jurisdiction will lose any money if they simply follow the law. And the law says you are to focus on your primary job of public safety and not running about our communities thinking that you're a federal immigration agent. So with that, I would ask you colleagues to resist the amendment.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? The clerk will take the call. There being 87 votes in the negative, the amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title, recognizing the minority leader?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have
You're
an amendment
welcome.
at the desk, 493422/1.
Amendment number 1.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So order.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Last year, this General Assembly, over the strenuous objection of many of us in the room, passed what has been called the tech tax, or the IT services tax. We became one of the few jurisdictions in the state, or excuse me, in the United States, to include a specified 3% services tax on a wide variety of data processing, software, and IT services professions and transactions. And we were told we had to do this. And why we had to do this? Well, we had a massive budget hole that we had to fill, and we were going to use taxes to fill it. Does anyone in the room remember how much we were told as legislators that we were going to get from this tech tax to fill the budget hole? Anybody? I know you can't really answer. It's not fair. $500 million. The folks who make all the decisions, and sometimes it ain't us. It's those people over there writing those fiscal notes. We live and breathe with them as if they were words from on high. And oftentimes they are wrong. Not maliciously wrong, just wrong. Because government cannot accurately predict private sector economies to the degree in which we think we can. Does anybody know how much the IT tech tax actually brought in for the first 2 quarters of its administration? The appropriations chair does. It should have been $250 million. That would have made sense. It's going to bring us 500. Half a year, we're going to get 250. What did we get? 70 million. We got 70 million. Or excuse me, that's not even right. We got 35 million. 70 would be for the whole year if you doubled it out. Now, the folks who claim to know more than what we do says, well, it's going to keep growing and growing and growing. The same people who told you it was going to be 500, they're now going to tell you that 35 through half a year is going to triple to 110 through the whole year. And then it's going to double again next year to 220 million. There was a good friend of mine, many in this room, who used to sit in this chair from Carroll County. He used to call things, I don't have his small town, lawyerly, Mayberry RFD charm, but he used to call things like this baloney. And that's what it is. If you're relying on this tech tax, you are relying on baloney. It doesn't work, hasn't worked. You want to know why we all left here and we were told we had a $300 and some million budget surplus anticipated for this year, and then we came back and told we had a $1.4, $1.5 billion hole? It's not just President Trump. It's not. It's because we thought we were getting $500 million for something that we got $35 million from. Imagine that. Imagine you went home to your spouse. Imagine you went back to your small business and you said, next year, we're going to have $500 to spend on this activity, and we budgeted for it, and you got $35. Would you have a hole in your budget? You sure as heck would, and that's what happens here year after year after year. So the IT tax, it doesn't work.
Thank you.
It doesn't work. So there's only one of 3 potential reasons for why it didn't work. Number one, because businesses shifted their services and their transactions because they're sophisticated and they're capable of doing it. It's the worldwide internet. It's not the Maryland internet. We don't control it. And they shifted these services and these monies and these revenues and these activities and these jobs to other states. That's a pretty good reason why it didn't produce much revenue. The other reason would be we really don't have much of a tech and data sector here. We thought we did. We thought if we put this 3% tax on everything they did, that we'd generate all this revenue. Turns out we don't have much of a tech and data sector. Well, that does not jibe with Governor Moore's position over and over again that we are one of the global centers for quantum and AI and data and tech. But yet, the tax that we imposed upon those folks generated a pittance of revenue. What's the best decision? And we took this into consideration because we understand that projected revenues, I bet you quite a bit of money, not 35 million, but I bet you quite a bit of money that the projected revenues for this year's tech tax don't come in as the actual revenues. We're going to miss again by tens, maybe hundreds, probably certainly definitely tens of millions of dollars. We're going to miss again, and that's going to contribute to next year's projected budget shortfall. But what we did, to be fair and to be honest, is we're not going to eliminate the tech tax today because the budget committees have built what they think, it's not their fault, what they've been told will be estimated to be recovered into this budget that we just voted on. So we're not going to eliminate it today, even though we'd like to. We're going to eliminate it at the start of the next fiscal year. So we're going to stop relying on faulty, false assumptions for revenue that doesn't exist. We're going to do something that is pro-business and that promotes the data and tech sector to reestablish themselves and grow here. And we're going to recognize that we made a mistake. We relied on a faulty assumption. We did something that has more likely a more negative effect than a positive effect. And we have the ability to look in the mirror, which we all should do as adults, which I have to do every darn day, and say, you know, I was wrong. I was wrong about that. It was a mistake. We can fix it. We can leave the revenue assumptions for this year so the budget doesn't go out of balance, but send a clear signal to this industry, to our citizens, to businesses across the country that we know we made a mistake and we're going to fix it. And that's what the amendment would do. It would remove the IT tax effective in the next fiscal year.
Thank you. Recognizing the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First,
You're
I feel
welcome.
obligated to defend the men and women who work at Department of Legislative Services and do our fiscal notes. I think they do an outstanding job, often under extreme pressure with moves that we do last minute, and and so I think that they do a great job giving us these fiscal notes. I also just have to tackle something technical before I get into the meat of this. The Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act is to finance the budget. You cannot spend money in the Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act. The BRFA is to recoup money to fund the budget, and I'm seeing a number of actions today that are frankly illegal and unconstitutional. If we adopted this here today, it would be struck, so the vote is sort of meaningless in that regard, but we're going to debate it. We'll debate it. It's fine. But I just have, for the good of the body, the BRFA can't be used to spend money. That's what the budget is for. The BRFA is for cutting or raising revenue. As to this tax, the gentleman talked about few states do this. One of them is such very liberal states as Texas, who does this. We're relitigating last year when we talked about revenue for that we raised on high-income earners, which I think has been pretty popular among the electorate, and this, which is a business tax, which are generally pretty popular among the electorate. As to what we're getting on this tax, we are getting less. The gentleman's right. We're not getting what we estimated. I would suggest $70 million is not nothing. The estimates go up from there. In talking to the Comptroller's office, and I thank the Ways and Means Committee for the discussions on this in the last couple of days to be ready for this, it is clear what the Comptroller is seeing is a lot of folks did their contracts. Smart business people, can't begrudge them. They did their contracts before this became law, right? Before this became law, so they sort of avoided the tax in that regard, which is why you see the estimates continue to go up. Not what we originally estimated, but not nothing, and certainly money that is needed to pay for vital services that we all love in this state: child care services, public education, DDA, and the like, other, SNAP, other things that we do. So I would ask that the body resist this amendment. Thank you.
Recognizing the minority whip.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I will tell you, and I appreciate you bringing up the part about procedural with our amendments. So our caucus, we asked the AG's office to take a break from suing the Trump administration and to look into some legal stuff for us. And they actually wrote back an opinion saying that our amendments actually were not, in fact, illegal or unconstitutional, that it was somewhat unclear. So I just want to say the floor leader was not 100% accurate on that our amendments are illegal or unconstitutional, something to that effect. We actually sought an AG's opinion, which we're happy to provide you. So that's point number one. Point number two is, I want to bring this up. We talk about real-life consequences of this. We sit in a room of 141 people. One of the members in this chamber had a tech company in Maryland. Happened to also be the vice chair of the business committee. And because of the detriment of this tech tax, felt the need to move his business out of state because this tech tax would completely destroy his business. So just imagine, in a room of 141 people, you got businesses moving out of Maryland. Well, just imagine what happens in a state of 6.5 million people. How many businesses are moving? because of stuff like this. And I'll also remind this body that in late 2024, our governor did an executive order saying that Maryland was going to be the epicenter of tech. We were going to recruit tech companies, bring them to Maryland. It was a great industry, and then we immediately stabbed the industry in the back, right, with this tech tax. And the last thing I'll say is this, is I met a young entrepreneur in Frederick who, on the promise that Maryland was going to be the place to bring his
Recognizing
business.
the delegate from Southern Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And, I just want to remind the body, and I appreciate the discussion, but I'd ask that we not impugn the motives of another member of this House. I understand you explained what he did, but also trying to explain his rationale, especially when he's not here. But I would ask that you please just not impugn the motives of another member of this House. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure, the motives of the person that's not here. I'll better watch my words. Okay, so I'll just say this. The last thing I'm going to say is that we had a young entrepreneur in Frederick that, with the promise of Maryland and Frederick County being the place to be, risked his entire life savings to bring his business to Frederick. And I met with this individual. He secretly told me that he was a liberal Democrat. I told him I'm a conservative Republican. But he felt betrayed. He felt betrayed that he risked it all to bring his business to Frederick, to bring his business to Maryland, and that the General Assembly passed this tech tax, which almost ruined him. And so my green vote for this amendment is for that individual that risked it all to come to Maryland for the hopes of something better, and we let him down. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
So the question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? The clerk will take the call. There being 86 votes in the negative, the amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Recognizing the delegate from Southern Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have
You're
an amendment
welcome.
at the desk. It is number 693-2281.
Amendment number 1.
So much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is a simple amendment. So what? I think so, because every year we have an amendment that talks about the gas tax and peg the rate of inflation. Well, this is a little bit different. The idea here is to have a simple 30-day moratorium on the gas tax as gas tax holiday. So I know we're going to hear it's Trump's fault. I got it. Okay, so when things are good, we don't talk, but when things are bad, it's Trump's fault. Get the blame, do the blame, Trump. But this is about affordability. And I'm the driver of the affordability because I drive a truck. And we offered during the energy bill an amendment, and we saved, and we agreed to $150 about was what the energy bill is going to save all of our homeowners. And then we also understand, because I sit on the energy subcommittee, there'll be millions of dollars in savings down the road, and they're going to appear. What payers need now is affordability. They need to have money in their pockets, much like the energy tax of $150 a year, to get something back. How do they pay? Well, we offer a bunch of opportunities here. One's the CEF account. The CEF account's been used for everything so far this year. That's how we're balancing the budget. When I look at the CEF, will it be replenished? Yes. It'll get replenished through RGGI, ACPs, etc. And we spent millions in the budget. We're going to spend millions of dollars on infrastructure, EV infrastructure. The concern I got is that the market for EVs by industry is drying up. Ford's out, GM's out, other companies are out. They're getting out of the business altogether. But we're going to double down on EV infrastructure. All told, if I remember the numbers correctly, about 150,000 EVs in the state. We have about 4 million gas cars in the state, and these guys need a break for 30 days. So as we talk about affordability in this session, this is about affordability. It's been the theme of the session. It's about affordability and putting a little bit of money back into people's pockets. And with that, I hope you will consider this amendment. Thank you.
Recognizing the Vice Chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the maker of the amendment for sharing it with us and explaining the amendment. I'd like to urge the body to reject this amendment, and I have a few reasons why. and hopefully more than a few of those reasons connect with different people. It's certainly right, as the maker of the amendment said, that these are tough budget times. But as we know with this budget, it already takes so many steps to address affordability for Marylanders with reducing energy costs, increasing child care scholarships, lowering housing costs, doing so much for food insecurity, and so many other things. But in particular for this amendment will cost our Transportation Trust Fund $115 million. So it underfunds it and will underfund it more over time. We have a maintenance backlog, I think we all know, and I think the chair of the committee already mentioned when we talk about affordability, hitting a pothole in the road and having to pay the money for that is certainly something that hits people. You know, the costs, we're probably saving people maybe $2 to $5 in a given month, and that's not nothing. And I know that that's the case, but I will remind everyone that during our debate on the Utility Relief Act, we were told that $150 a year was nothing, and that it would do nothing for people, and that it was negligible. But we're being told now that $2 to $5 a month in 1 month would make such a big deal. About to wrap up. Give me a moment here. And the last point I want to make is about the nature of these tax holidays. They're very gimmicky. They're bad governance. Some would say, well, hey, delegate, we do this for school supplies. We do this for energy efficient projects. Let's be clear, when we do tax holidays for those are about spurring investments. Those are about helping working families. In this case, again, it's just a few dollars. Now, some might also remind me and others that we did this several years ago. As I notice every day, my nearly 7-year-old daughter is getting older, smarter, and more mature, and so are we. And so I would argue that this is not the time to do something like this, and it's gimmicky. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no.
Explain your votes. When she cuts us off, we're going to explain our votes.
Yes, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Can explain your vote?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We're going to have lots of people explain our votes.
Yeah.
If the debate is cut off, we'll explain our votes.
Sorry, I started reading it.
I appreciate it. This isn't gimmicky. You know how I know it's not gimmicky? Because I'm going to read something to you, because I can't imagine that the Senate President, or not Senate President, the Senate Democratic leader, Lori Bierman, 2 days ago in the state of Florida in Tallahassee, a good Democratic leader, would propose the exact same thing. And she would say the least we can do for Floridians during this time of economic crisis and war is provide relief at the gas pump. She's proud to join her Democratic caucus colleagues in this effort to make Florida more affordable. And the Florida House Democratic leader, good Democrat, she said the least we could do is support this tax holiday and save people a few dollars every time they fill up. The governor of Connecticut, anybody have an idea what party he's from? Your party, not mine. You know what he proposed last week? Gas tax holiday. There's a lovely lady from Altoona, Pennsylvania, a place that I know. She happens to be a Democratic state senator. She just proposed it last week. If we want to talk about affordability and keeping prices low for consumers at this time, this is the way to go. New York State Democratic legislators have proposed it. In Georgia, they actually just did it in a bipartisan fashion. Georgia just cut their gas tax for 60 days. For 60 days. It's amazing how every other place can propose this. And Democrats from sea to shining sea, or at least on the Atlantic seaboard, sea to shining sea, can propose this, and it can be a valid idea and it can be accepted, but here it's not. There are pay-fors in the amendment that would not deplete the Transportation Trust Fund in our view. There are pay-fors that would achieve that. We've worked very hard to make sure in each of these amendments to not throw this existing budget out of balance. If you're going to go home and tell people that you did something, can you control the war in Iran? No. Can you control the Straits of Hormuz? Absolutely not. Can you save them an estimated $7 every time that they fill up an average sized tank? Over the course of the month, that might be $21, $28, $35, depending on how much you drive. That's more than we saved in the energy bill. Can you tell them you did that? You sure can. And if you don't, that's on you. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the majority whip.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I always appreciate in explaining my vote when we are lectured on what our party does, because there's a lot on the opposite aisle. I'll quote, "I thought it would be much, much worse. Actually, I thought there would be a chance it could be much worse. It's not bad. It's going to be over pretty soon. Do you know who said that? President Trump on the 19th of this month. There's a way that prices could go down. Their party could end the war. And so the reality is, as the vice chair of the committee said, this is a gimmick. We are doing our best in this budget to make sure we're providing for the most vulnerable among us. And so I ask you to join me in a red vote. Thank you.
Recognizing the gentleman from Hartford and then the minority whip.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To explain my vote. So to follow up on something that the minority leader was alluding to, we spent a lot of time, and this body put a lot of work into a bill that would save Marylanders an average of $12.50 a month on their energy bill. That's it. Now I'm being told $7 per fill-up is not that much. It's not that big of a deal. We were told $12.50 a month is going to change the energy policy here in the state and make sure we can allow low-income people to be able to pay their energy bills. But $7 a fill-up, not a big deal. That doesn't jive. $7, 2 fill-ups, you've saved more than our entire energy package provided you in just 2 fill-ups. That's it. It's very simple. And also to address the gimmick issue, listen, we have tax-free week. We have the clean appliance day to get no taxes on clean appliances. But also, this body right now just passed a bill to allow for tax-free day for veterans on Veterans Day. I was at a breakfast with the Veterans Caucus with the governor this morning. He was telling us how much he cannot wait for us to send that bill to his desk so he can sign to make sure we're supporting our veterans. Is that gimmicky? We just all voted for it, so we just voted for a gimmick? I disagree. I think we're voting to try to show that we support veterans, and this body supported that. And this body was right by supporting that piece of legislation to make sure we can give a little more benefit to our veterans and show how much we support them. That's not a gimmick. That's taking care of veterans. That's taking care of people who need support. And that's why I'm going to vote green on this amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the minority whip, and then I'm going to come to the Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I rise in support of this because I got to tell you, 46 cents a gallon is certainly not a gimmick. $7 a fill-up, multiple fill-ups per month, it's not a gimmick. That's real money. And I'm proud to see a bipartisan support for this amendment. Surely, I don't think everyone here thinks this is a gimmick. This is a way to save real money. And look, we're not in charge of foreign policy. We're just Maryland lawmakers. And this is something certainly within our purview to save Marylanders real money. I am proud of my green vote. 46 cents a gallon, $7 a fill-up, $15 a month. You got it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome. I did promise to come to the Eastern Shore. Go ahead.
Briefly, I'm voting for the amendment. It is so much a gimmick that this legislature granted the Board of Public Works the ability to make a similar act of their own volition if needed. And so we're saying as a minority party that it's needed. To say it's a gimmick, it's a little disingenuous, and frankly, it got me to stand up, and I'm being far kinder than I felt like I was going to be about 2 or 3 minutes ago.
Recognizing the gentleman from Anne Arundel, then I'm coming to Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
I stand to explain my vote. And this isn't like we're asking somebody to do without. I saw in the bill he's taking $25 million out of the Strategic Energy Investment Fund. I wonder where he learned that from. Maybe the governor, who had $1 billion balance in that Strategic Energy Investment Fund. David Romans gave us a report that said $164 million will be available at the end of this year because we swept $800 million out. So nobody's going without. All we're doing is asking to give a little relief back to Marylanders who have already paid into this. They paid every dollar of that Strategic Energy Investment Fund. All we're saying is just give us $25 million and give a little break to our Marylanders that are being crushed every day. If that's a gimmick, nobody's laughing. People want their money back, and they've already paid, and this is a great way to give them a little bit of break at the pump. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Baltimore City, and then I'm coming back to Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To explain my vote, colleagues, in our state transportation budget this year, the State Highway Administration had $1 billion increase. Every other modal administration is basically flat. But the State Highway Administration had a $1 billion increase. If we vote green on this amendment, the biggest impact you're going to see is to the State Highway Administration, because a lot of that money is federal money that we were able to draw down because of the increase that we're putting into their budget. That is roads, bridges, and highways that all of our constituents need to be maintained around the state. If you vote green on this amendment, you're impacting our ability to maintain those roads, bridges, and highways around the state. That's why I'm red.
Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll be very brief. I think the bad governance is the fact that we have one of the highest gas taxes in the entire country, number one. And the gimmick is the fact that we allow our gas tax to go up without having to be held accountable for voting for that tax. That is a gimmick. That's why I support this. We've talked about affordability, and this would temporarily help with affordability. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Montgomery County, then the Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Gas prices at the pump are high because this Republican president started an illegal war, and we're here now. We cannot pretend that Maryland is a state unto itself and the actions of the federal government does not impact us here at the state level. If we want gas prices to go down, end the illegal war, and I think Republicans, our Republican colleagues, should be sending that message to Republicans in DC so that we can get greater affordability in our state and not introducing a 30-day gas, moratorium that, if we're being honest, we don't know how long this war is going to last. If we want gas prices to go down at the pump, we have to end this illegal war, and it's that simple. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the gentleman from the Eastern Shore.
Yeah, this is almost funny because I'm listening to how the transportation fund has been degraded. I'm listening to the war, but the war is what filled the coffers for the last month. That we're just asking to get some of this money back to the people that actually, we're not driving anymore in these roads with our gas tanks full. We're not doing anything like that, but you took the money. We're all good with taking it now, but when we ask for it back to say give it to the people, we're sitting back blaming Trump, we're blaming everybody else, but it almost would be a wash if you really look at it. For 30 days you had it, you've had this thing, the prices increase. For 30 days, let's stop it. Your revenue shouldn't be much different other than you're capitalizing on the war.
Recognizing the Vice Chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To explain my red vote, to recap some of the things said before, I heard a lot about what the Democrats are doing in Florida and some other places. I do know that the governor in Florida, the Republican governor, has rejected this as an ineffective, and again, that idea of bad governance. But again, we're not Florida, we're Maryland. This proposal would lose us $115 million a year, and for that reason, I urge the body to reject the amendment. Thank you.
The clerk will take the call. There being 88 votes in the negative, the amendment fails. Recognizing the minority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate it. I have an amendment at the desk 733920/1.
Amendment number 1.
Move so much to be considered the reading of the amendment.
So order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
One last discussion about the gas tax. So we've talked for several years here about our automatic inflator that goes into the gas tax every year based upon the consumer price index. We don't vote to raise the gas tax anymore. We don't have to. It just goes up by the nature of economics because we have inflation. Because during the 2021 to 2025 period, we had inflation like this country had not seen since the 1970s and early 1980s. And we continue to still experience inflation in a way that we would like not to. It's certainly been reduced significantly in the last year or two. But because of that inflation in most years, and certainly in this year, with the increases in gas prices, this summer, we're going to pay even more if we allow that CPI trigger to exist on your gas prices. It's adding insult to injury. We already have, at 46 cents per gallon, most estimates view it as the 7th highest gas tax in America. I'm surprised because I know that many of you like for us to be number one in everything, that we haven't tried to shoot it up to be number one in gas taxes in America. But I'll be bluntly honest, I don't think you can out-tax California and Illinois. They have the 2 highest gas taxes in the United States. I don't think we'll get to their level. And to be fair, we don't even have as high gas taxes as Pennsylvania, our neighbor. They have a different system that they don't apply certain excise taxes to it, but they have a higher retail gas tax. At the end of the day, all the amendment would do is say for 1 year, we pause the automatic inflator of the CPI gas tax increase. Because we know, and the gentleman from Montgomery County just said, that we cannot predict what the long-term outcome on oil and gas prices of international affairs will be. I, for one, am happy that the federal government is taking action against the horrific regime in Iran, a regime that abuses its own women and girls, a regime that foments terrorism across the globe, a regime that tries to develop nuclear weapons, and a regime that frequently provokes people to chant in the streets, "Death to Israel, death to Jews, death to America." I'm happy. I'm happy that we're doing something as a country to put a stop to that. But it has an effect. It has an economic effect. And again, the only way you can ameliorate any of that is with the vote that you just took, which isn't going to happen, or with the vote on this amendment that would pause the CPI anticipated increase that will occur here in a couple of months to gas taxes and give your constituents a little bit of a break. If you tell people that you're for affordability, but you won't take actions to actually make their lives more affordable, I don't know how you square that at the end of the night. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move the amendment.
Recognizing the Vice Chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam
You're
Speaker.
welcome.
Thank you to my colleague sitting a few feet in front of me for that amendment and a chance to have this discussion. On the last bill on the gas tax holiday, I mentioned some of the reasons why I want to reject this amendment. I want to repeat a few of those points and then add a few others. I want to make sure that people hear the different arguments. First, it's about the underfunding of our Transportation Trust Fund. That's already been a concern that we all have. We have a maintenance backlog, again, with roads and bridges across our state. We all have those roads in our community, from I-81 to US 15 to other roads that we want fixed, our local roads, the potholes, everything else. The argument about the negligible impact of what this would do and yet cost the state so much more. And also, the money in our Transportation Trust Fund, as the Minority Leader knows, protects our debt service ratio and how much money that we have in our trust fund. I want to hit on two things about the automatic CPI that we have, the increase. The cost of asphalt, steel, labor, all of them rise. A flat gas tax, not adjusted for inflation, effectively loses that value over time. By indexing the gas tax to inflation, we protect the strategic investments that drive regional growth. And then the last one I want to make, and to the gentleman on the last debate made a mention of this, about when we have this automatic increase, that it takes away the power from this body. And I would argue, Madam Speaker, that it gives us the ultimate power of oversight, in fact. By having a stable, predictable revenue stream as the default, we're no longer governed by the crisis of the month. We aren't forced to scramble for emergency funds when a bridge fails or a road crumbles. We have the power to let the system work and the absolute authority to step in and pause indexing whenever we deem it necessary for our constituents. There's no reason to cut this off. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I urge the body to reject this amendment.
So the question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the gentleman from Baltimore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll just be very brief. I appreciate the amendment. I support the amendment in terms of the affordability measure, but I also just want to take 1 second. The way we do the gas tax now takes away the responsibility of lawmakers to have to decide and tell everybody, whether it's in the audience or everybody throughout the entire state of Maryland, whether or not they said we're going to raise your taxes on gasoline. It was a political gimmick designed to protect politicians from both parties to have to make a decision on whether or not to raise the citizens' taxes. It may make sense from a financial standpoint, sure, but it's about transparency, and every politician should be held accountable to their local citizens whether or not they decided to raise the taxes on something like gasoline, which hits every single person in this state almost weekly, if not on a more daily basis. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The clerk will take the call. There being 86 votes in the negative, the amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Recognizing the delegate from Frederick and Carroll.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
I have an amendment at the desk, amendment number 743-226-1.
Amendment number 1.
You'll be happy to know that I'm following the rules of a potential recouping of some money, more than just a few dollars, although if we did all these previous ones, I would still argue that that would be quite a bit for our families. This amendment would enact a formula change in the per pupil calculation in our blueprint process that we use currently. We know from news sources that the current process of counting students just one time of year on September 30th has resulted in an inaccurate count of student population. We know that the result has been the funding of students who have been identified as whereabouts unknown, to the tune of $168 million in 2024, $250 million for just last year. This amendment would call for an accounting of students just twice a year, September 30th and May 31st, to get an accurate number of how many students are still attending school and that we are funding on a per pupil basis. This will give accuracy. This amendment would also request a report each year to the Senate Budget and Tax Committee and the House Appropriations Committees so that we can look at this data. And not only can we use this data to make sure that we are accurately spending millions of dollars of our taxpayer funds, we can also have more data on the other problem, is where are students, why are they not in class, why are they there on September 30th, and what happened to them between then and the end of the school year. So for those reasons, I think this is a very wise thing to do. It calls into account true accountability, true transparency, and gives us the data that we need to make very good financial decisions on behalf of the taxpayer. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome. Recognizing the delegate from Baltimore City.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
And thank you to my friend from Carroll County for your amendment and getting it to us in advance. And I know this is an issue of great importance to many people in the chamber. We want to know that our kids are safe. We want to know that all our kids are going to school. But unfortunately, this amendment as presented may not solve the very problems for which we are discussing. There's a couple of things I want to lift for your consideration as I urge you to resist this amendment. One, this amendment is in part related to a House bill that was considered in appropriations, but unfortunately was not able to be favorably reported out. We have to be careful that when we make alterations to the formula for counting, that we actually end up with a more precise count and not less precision, or create more chaos when we're seeking to decrease it. And so for the consideration of the body, I ask you to resist this amendment because it will not actually improve the veracity of the full-time enrollment data for a couple of reasons. One, we know that areas that have high concentrations of poverty often have other factors that contribute to the instability of people's attendance at school. And snapshots immediately from the previous year, one day in September and one day in May, will not necessarily be more accurate for the next year. It will actually perhaps even require us to come back and have a whole other supplemental because those days are outside of the time that we're here. We want to actually have data that is valuable valuable, that is as accurate as possible. And that's why this body passed House Bill 490, which will do some revisions and alterations to the blueprint, empowering and requiring the Accountability and Implementation Board for the blueprint to come up with some reports related to some of the very data points that were mentioned by the good delegate, but also most importantly, we have to get to a better full-time enrollment count, but particularly a more reliable count for our young people that are living in poverty. And so because we have made provision in House Bill 490, we're giving the time and we are demanding reports from AIB to reflect the path forward to have the tightest count possible. I ask you to resist this amendment as both being a bit premature and also not necessarily hitting the mark of the veracity that we're seeking from the efforts that we're seeking from the AIB. And so with that, I request that the body resist this amendment. Thank you.
You're welcome. Recognizing the minority whip.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
I rise in support of this amendment, and I'll just break it down, right? We have, as a General Assembly, increased spending per pupil to like the highest in the country. Marylanders spend more money per student than most places in the entire country. But here's the issue. They count the students at the beginning of the year, and then we don't know if they stick around, right? It's possible that 10,000 students are no longer there, but yet taxpayers are still spending money as if they are. The amount of money we spend keeps going up every year, but there is very little accountability as to whether the student is in their seat, right? What are we paying for? We want these kids to succeed. Every single kid in our state, in every square inch of our state, in every jurisdiction, and that's why taxpayers in Frederick County also contribute to the success of students in other parts of the state. And so it is important for me to say, hey, let's find out if these kids are there. And we don't know because we count one time. Think about that. Every day we come into the General Assembly, we push a button for quorum, and the Speaker ensures that we're here, and we're here to do our job, at least most of us. But for students, we don't know if they're there, and we refuse to count or to even verify that they're there. This is a very reasonable amendment that only ensures that what taxpayers are stepping up to cover to ensure the success of our students, that our students are in their seats. We have tried this amendment for several years. Here's an opportunity for, once again, a priority of both the Republican and Democrat parties, which is accountability, right? Accountability. This is accountability for our tax dollars. This is accountability for our students. And by the way, we're not just looking out for taxpayers here, we're looking out for the students. Let's ensure they're in class, they're learning, and they're being prepared for success in our state. I vote green. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Explain my vote briefly, Madam Speaker.
Yes, recognizing the minority leader.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't think that we can say that the measure offered by the gentlelady from Carroll County would not improve the veracity of our count. And I'll just very quick little story. I have several uncles in the construction business, and they were helping to build some stuff at my mom's house, and they asked me to help, and you may figure this out or not. I'm not exactly Mr. Construction Worker, and I went and helped, and they told me a very little simple thing. Measure twice, cut once. Measure once, cut twice. And I said, what in the heck does that mean? And they said, if you only measure something one time and just go on it, there's a very high chance you're going to be wrong and inaccurate, and you're going to have to cut the board, the construction material twice because you screwed up because you didn't measure it exactly accurately the first time. If you measure it twice, you're checking yourself and you're making sure that you're getting it right, and then you only have to cut and do the work once. Delegate from Carroll County's bill is measure twice to get it right. It's that simple. Measuring once oftentimes results in inaccurate measurements. And that's what we've been doing for a long time, and we've been costing the taxpayers of Maryland millions and millions of dollars because we refuse to do a very simple thing. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome. Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
To explain my vote, one thing I am proud of is that I actually am quite handy. I helped my father build our build our old house. And one of the things I also know is that children are a bit different from inanimate objects. They're a bit more complex, and they have something called a lived experience. And so that's why it's really important when we're making investments in children to not simply tie the funding to one count, because we want to ensure that they access something that they're obligated under the law to access, which is a public education. And so if that requires us expending additional resources to bring them back, to support their families, and to ensure they access that education, I think we should never, ever conflate things that are inanimate with the robust, complex lives of human beings. And that's why I am encouraged that so many people saw fit to resist this amendment.
The clerk would take the call. There being 92 votes in the negative, the amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Recognizing the delegate from Frederick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have
You're
an amendment
welcome.
at the desk. It is amendment number 923621/1.
Amendment number 1.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So order.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So this amendment we're going to call the Hart Amendment. And what this does, it enables the state to participate in the federal tax credit scholarship program. I was going to present 3 amendments today, all centered around making changes to rein in future spending as we are headed toward a fiscal cliff. However, after discussions with the chair, my understanding is that we will be addressing many of my concerns in the interim, and I appreciate his good faith and look forward to the conversations and solutions we will find. Concentration of poverty is a big driver of where our community schools go. And rural poverty, however, is not concentrated. In Frederick County alone, we have 10 community schools. Only 1 is in a rural area. So while we are still holding schools harmless to counts over a decade old for our farm students, 34,000 held harmless in this year's count. Now, why is this so important, and what is the impact? Because we may overfund or underfund some of the schools, we don't know, which brings me to this amendment. How many of you support community schools? If you do, you are going to want to be green on this amendment. How many of you, like our Frederick County Executive Jessica Fitzwater, support nonprofits? Yesterday, she announced $900,000 in awards to local nonprofits through HEART, which stands for Helping Empower Area Resources Together. And in an initiative designed to support local nonprofit organizations that provide vital resources and services directly to the people of Frederick County, allowing them to use the grants to fund, to enhance their services and support their community. So if you agree with that, you will want to be green on this amendment, as that is exactly what this amendment empowers us to do. The amendment, again, called now the Hart Amendment, because I really like that, Helping Empower Area Resources Together. This initiative will now enable scholarship granting organizations to support our local students, thereby our public school systems. It will allow Maryland registered nonprofits that register as scholarship granting organizations to raise funds when individuals contribute $1,700 in a federal non-refundable tax credit donation, which would then be used to help provide public school student scholarships for services like tutoring. So how many students do we think are still impacted by COVID learning loss? How many struggle with reading, especially those who did not benefit from the enactment of the science of reading? How many struggle with math and need math tutoring, career training, financial literacy? We need to allow our public schools to continue to have the power to innovate, which my school system told me in December that they are losing the ability to do because of the prescriptive nature of the blueprint. Scholarship granting organizations' funds don't just go to private school students, which is what you're going to hear at some points. Many are actually designed to help our majority of public school students. They are designed to cover the very things that the Blueprint's community school model calls for: tutoring, special needs support, services, technology, academic supplies. So when an SGO provides a scholarship to a child, it effectively creates a mobile community school. and at least 90% of the funds that they raise must go to the students. And there is built-in accountability at both the state and the federal level. Colleagues, we all agree on the mission laid out in the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, that we must address the whole child. However, if we are truly committed to the community school model, we must be honest about one thing. A government mandate alone cannot reach every child in every corner of Maryland. This is why this amendment is the necessary missing piece to our educational puzzle at absolutely no cost to the state. The amendment just enables the state to participate in the federal tax credit program so that Maryland students are not left behind when these opportunities and investment of federal tax credits go to students in other states, as they will if we do not embrace this opportunity. Madam Speaker, I move the amendments.
So, recognizing the delegate from Baltimore City.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
And thank you to my friend from Frederick County for your amendment and getting to us in advance. Might be surprising, maybe not. I am going to be asking you to resist this amendment, but it's not necessarily because the substance of the amendment doesn't have some aspects of merit. It's really about the prematurity of the proposal. Treasury has not yet promulgated the regulations to carry out this premise. We have consulted with the Policy Committee of Jurisdiction, and we are awaiting that guidance in order to take action. Now, in the interim, the governor could take action if for some reason those regs do emerge, and if we are dissatisfied with that result, we have an opportunity to come back and have our policy committees take up that very matter and refine it to the needs of the state of Maryland. But at this time, the U.S. Treasury Department has not promulgated the regs to give us sufficient guidance to carry out this amendment, and as such, I request that you reject it.
Recognizing the maker of the amendment.
Thank you. Colleagues, at that time, if we wait, it will be too late to rectify anything for the next year, resulting in the loss of potentially millions of dollars for Maryland students.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? The clerk will take the call. There being 91 votes in the negative, the amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Recognizing the delegate from Frederick and Carroll.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
I have an amendment. I have an amendment at the desk. It's amendment number 363927-1.
Amendment number 1.
Moves so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
So, last year, there was a major change made to the historic motor vehicle program. For years, the program had always been operated under if a car was at least 20 years old, you could go and get historic plates. And what happened last year via the BRFA was we changed that. We changed it from a rolling number of years, and we changed it to 1999 or older. So we just had a hard stop in 1999, which I'm not quite sure how we came up with that number. And even further, for the vehicles that were made in the year, or had a model year of 2000, 2001, 2, 3, 4, and 5, those cars unfortunately did not get grandfathered in. And I'm not sure about the rest of this body, but I would say, in addition to the number of emails and calls my office receives on energy and taxes, I would say this probably came in maybe a top 5. I was quite frankly surprised about how many emails I was getting about this program, but the reality is when we allowed this change to go through in the BRFA last year, it affected approximately 72,000 vehicles. So we're talking about about 1/3 of all the vehicles that have historic tags, or did have historic tags. So let's move forward and talk about what we've tried to do this year with the program. Many legislators, both the House and the Senate, from both sides of the aisle, put in bills that were going to try to not necessarily even reverse it, but go back to a rolling number of years. Most of the bills were taking it from not going back to 20, but it was going to take it to 25 years. Where are those bills at now? Unfortunately, none of those bills really moved anywhere. But thankfully, our colleagues in the other chamber in the Senate, they decided that they were going to make an amendment to the BRFA, and they took out the 1999 and put in a rolling number of years, which they settled on 25. And unfortunately, once the BRFA came over to our chamber, it was decided that that would be removed. In fact, there are no changes being made to the historic motor vehicle program as of, in the current form of the BRFA. So let's talk about affordability. It's the big theme of the year, affordability. So as a result of last year's BRFA, we doubled the cost of our registration fees. For a normal registration, we doubled it from $67.50 to $120.50. Even for historic tags, we didn't quite nearly double it. We only we increased it by about $10. Went from about $45 to $55. So for those 72,000 vehicles, where those Marylanders are now paying about $120 versus $55, and that's a difference of $65. Some people are probably gonna think to themselves, $65, big whoop. Well, this is the same body that also, we're all patting ourselves on the back, celebrating that we're gonna save ratepayers $12 on their utility bills. So I think $65, maybe for some people, is a world of difference. And then while we're talking about affordability, let's talk about where we rank in the country on motor vehicle registrations. We are, I believe, the 5th most expensive state when it comes to motor vehicle registrations. So I just want to wrap up by saying that I think a hard cutoff of 1999, it never quite made sense last year. I think that going back to a number of rolling years and settling on 25 over 20 is absolutely appropriate. I think the amendment restores fairness and predictability. With that, thank you, Madam Speaker. I move the amendment.
Thank you. Recognizing the Vice Chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you to the delegate for sharing this amendment. I want to urge the body to resist this amendment. I want to make a few points about it. First being about what it will cost us annually, and based on the fiscal notes of some of the bills that are out there this year, about $1.5 million in this next fiscal year, rising up to nearly $8 million by fiscal year 31. But I do want to recognize that what was being offered by the gentleman, that certainly the idea has merit, and that certainly the idea of a rolling 25-year standard or a 20-year standard is something that should be considered, and I think that's something that should be in front of the Environment and Transportation Committee, and that's where it deserves its full debate. There are 3 active bills this session, and as was mentioned, bipartisan bills, House Bill 4, 125, and 775. And I think that's where the debate should be. I do want to make 2 final points about the change that we made last year. Registering our historic vehicle is significantly lower than registering a regular car, and there's really not a reason to do so, especially since it was being abused in some cases. As I've learned, several non-historic cars were getting this designation. This historic designation was not designed to memorialize your kid's beat-up 2002 Subaru Impreza. This designation is more for those classic 1978 Corvettes, 1955 Ford Thunderbirds, and going even further back, a 1932 Ford Model B. So for all these reasons, and for all these cars, I urge the body to resist this amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome. Recognizing the maker of the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
And thank you to the floor leader. I appreciate the comments. I just would like to respond to a few of those, and I completely agree that there are folks that are out there that are abusing the program. There's absolutely no doubt. And I would be interested in seeing some legislation that maybe actually confronted that, maybe created 2 different classes, maybe one that had to do with just cars that are simply old, like the one you referenced. I was going to go with the 1997 Toyota Tercel. That was going to be my reference. Yeah, maybe two classes, one for just straight up old cars, and then one for actual classic cars that you would put in a parade or whatnot. But I think the changes that were made last year and the changes that were made last year didn't really actually address that issue, which I do believe is an issue. And then as far as the amount of money that the state would be losing, the floor leader was absolutely correct with the numbers, but I just want to mention that obviously the largest the money that the registration fees, it goes to a number of different state organizations, different groups, but the biggest one is the Transportation Trust Fund. And yes, it would take starting next fiscal year, it would take about $1 million, and it increases by about $1 million each of those years. But we're talking about an incredibly large amount of money in the Transportation Trust Fund. If I was looking at the budget correctly, I believe about $1 billion comes to the state each year through corporate income registrations and miscellaneous MVA fees. So I don't think the loss of $1 million would exactly wreck the Transportation Trust Fund. So with that, thank you, Madam Speaker.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? The clerk will take the call. There being 91 votes in the negative, the amendment fails. Recognizing the delegate from Southern Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I got an amendment at us. Amendment 143125/1.
Amendment number 1.
So be considered reading an amendment.
So order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
I want to thank the work of the committee and the minority leader. On the budget, there was a nonprofit amendment that was agreed to, and that provided some,
thank you,
I won't say transparency, but some regulations on nonprofits, whether they were acting in good faith with taxpayers' money. Now, that was part of our agenda package that we've had this year, and we'd like to get the second part of that considered by the committee. I want to thank the committee chairman for some kind words and exchanging some ideas last night on the phone. I appreciate that. But the amendment that I'm offering here is pretty simple. It requires nonprofits that get more than $50,000 of taxpayer money in grants, state bonds, or local impact grants to be PIA eligible, meaning they qualify for the Public Information Act. And I believe that's a big deal because there's about $6 billion in money that transfers from Maryland to nonprofits that really is not reported. We don't have any idea how much it is and where it goes. And even though there's reports on a lot of these fundings afterwards, there's no way to get any transparency as the money's being spent. So with that, there's been 31 other states that allow some type of PIA requests. And I just want to read to you this document from the nonprofit conference from the comptroller. And it really states what the problem we're facing. Survey result that shows that revenue sources for community-based nonprofits are 51% government sources. So when I was growing up, I always thought nonprofits made money off the private sector, not government sources. If these nonprofits are going to take money from government, they should be held to the same rules and transparency that government's held to. So with that, Madam Speaker, I move the amendment. Thank you.
You're welcome. Recognizing the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and
You're
I
welcome.
do thank the maker of the amendment. We had a nice phone conversations last night on this amendment. I know that he is very much interested in accountability on this subject area. This is a bill. This is an exact bill in GLEE. I did look at the bill and the bill file, and thank you to the members of GLEE for helping me through that last night. Some of the folks that opposed the bill in GLEE included the ARC, disability providers, MICUA, who were worried about academic records and privacy being released, who worried about various fishing expeditions. Look, I think the gentleman wants to provide more transparency. I would advise the gentleman, sometimes it takes years to get bills passed. I know that very well personally, to keep working with the committee on this. I think there are problems with the bill. In addition to the people who have opposed the bill, the amount that we have in the bill is so low that some of the nonprofits I talked to said, well, we may have to spend more in compliance on this than we get. So I think he just needs to keep working on this bill. I do think that this is a good opportunity for me to talk about a little bit of the things that we do have in state law already for these nonprofits. First, they have to report, and there is a public dashboard on the money they receive and how they spend that money. I think that is great transparency. Additionally, they have to give a report to the comptroller. The comptroller then reviews the report and has to authorize the spending. The comptroller then has the ability to ask for a final report as well and to do an audit, sua sponte, or on their own. They can do an audit. Additionally, the Office of Legislative Audits, and if the gentleman has any concerns about any particular nonprofit, that's fair. I would advise you work with the Legislative Audits Committee to look into those, because they can do an independent audit. So we do a lot of transparency. I know there's been some news about some of our municipalities and counties. That's not the state. I think we have a lot of transparency. The amendment we took earlier is additional transparency. We can always do more. I understand that. I just don't think this vehicle is ready at this time on the House floor, so I asked for a red.
Okay.
Recognizing the maker of the amendment.
That's fair enough, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to respond to the floor leader's questions on that. The reason why we drew it up at 50,000 is we were trying to exclude small nonprofits, because nonprofits that get over 50,000 already have to comply with the 990. And knowing this, I don't believe it's erroneous for those nonprofits to comply. But we'll keep taking swings at this and trying to provide nonprofits. Again, I want to thank the committee for taking some of the language and the intent that was found in House Bill 122. So with that, I appreciate your comments, and I'll remove my amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Okay, so the amendment has been withdrawn. Hearing no objection, the amendment is withdrawn. Thank you. Thank you very much for working. I mean, you called last night, and thank you very much. And this is what people at home don't see. It's all the work that goes into this process. And I thank all of you for doing it. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title?
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the gentleman from Anne Arundel.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. Speaker, I have an amendment at the desk. Amendment 113226/1.
Amendment number 1.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So order.
Madam Speaker, in the body, this amendment restores the cuts to the police officers and the probation agent scholarship fund. In the budget highlights I had a chance to take a look at, we received earlier in session. The governor speaks to the term of, there is no better calling, no higher calling for any state's chief executive than protecting their people. This scholarship will help Marylanders with a more educated police force. Some people might say that this scholarship fund has been severely underutilized. Had a chance to talk to the floor leader a little bit this morning, and we both agree we could do a better job of marketing this program, encouraging our police officers to take advantage of this program. And what this amendment does, body, it simply eliminates future cuts in the out years. I believe we all should want to work with law enforcement, encourage the scholarship fund, encourage education, and encourage them to be better police officers and better agents for all of us here in Maryland. So when you take a look at this, it's very simple. It just restores some of the funding that was cut. It's been significantly higher in previous years. And I want to just make sure that all of our police officers and our probation agents have the opportunity for a higher education. We have an amazing police force here in this chamber, and we want them to be educated and take advantage of these programs. And therefore, body, I should take a look at this amendment, seriously consider this amendment, and how we can better utilize our police officers, better utilize this program, and be better for all of Maryland today on Maryland Day. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You are welcome.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're
and I want to
welcome.
thank you for your leadership today, and
you.
also the gentleman for bringing us this amendment early. Colleagues, I'm asking that we resist this amendment This fund, which we do support, and we've maintained this year, funding to the tune of $500,000 for this underutilized fund. And I want to give you a few more numbers specifically. This year, this was the record high for the amount of utilization for this fund, and it was only $250,000 out of the $2 million fund. So a 13% utilization rate. In a tough budget year, we're trying to find all the different ways where we can maintain our values and also find some places to cut. This committee, I'm very proud of the work that we've done. We left $500,000 in the budget for this program. And I also want to commend the gentlelady from the Eastern Shore for passing legislation that I voted for. The maker of this amendment also supported to expand access to this fund to our corrections officers as well. And so we're hoping that next year, with your partnership, we can fully utilize the $500,000 that are there. And so, colleagues, I'm asking you to resist this amendment. I also do want to just point out that the cut, the $1.5 million cut, was proposed to come from the Maryland Legal Services Corporation, which provides help for people facing evictions and other vulnerable moments that they're going through. So for all these reasons, I ask that you oppose this amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome. Recognizing the maker of the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I just want to thank the floor leader for his great work and great explanation of where the fund is, where the fund is, where the fund was, where the fund is currently. 64 officers took advantage of this program. They're enrolled in universities today, and what we want to continue to do is to grow the amount of people that are utilizing this program. We want to see that grow from 64 to, say, 164. And we want to make sure that we have the money that's available. That fund is currently being utilized at about $3,400 per user. Why wouldn't we want to increase the amount that we can utilize, increase the amount of funding that we have so that we can have pay for those scholarships? And so, therefore, I push the amendment. I encourage the body to vote green on this amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? The clerk will take the call. There being 94 votes in the negative, the amendment fails. One second. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Recognizing the minority whip.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have an
You're
amendment on the
welcome.
desk. Amendment number 983201.
Amendment number 1.
Move so much be considered reading of the amendment.
So order.
So, folks, it's getting to the end. This is an amendment that rolls back the increase in fee for the emissions testing.
Thank you.
And I'll just tell you, the only thing that Marylanders hate more than the fact that their registration fees doubled is that the obsolete emissions testing program in our state also was doubled last year from $15 to $30. And the reason why I say it's obsolete is that this program is so effective, half the jurisdictions in Maryland don't even require it, right? So we're talking about clean air, but yet half the jurisdictions in Maryland don't even use the program. More importantly, any vehicle that's within 6 or 7 years old has the technology that completely makes this program completely obsolete. And if your vehicle is 25 years old, also exempt from the program. So what we have essentially is an insult to injury. We have a program, a requirement for some jurisdictions that people hate, and this body doubled the fee on these hardworking Marylanders. So here's once again an opportunity for us to stand together for affordability, for rationality, and let's roll back the emissions fee increase that was passed last year from $15 to $30. Let's move it back to $15. It's a simple amendment, and I think the people in your jurisdictions, at least the ones that enforce this program, will thank you for it. I move the amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome. Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you to the maker of the amendment. I would ask the body to reject this amendment. The emissions testing program is not obsolete. And It may one day be obsolete, but it is not obsolete right now. And it does apply to vehicles older than 6 years. And you may not realize this, but in the 1990s, the EPA rated Maryland severe for ground level ozone. It was only slightly better than the worst state in the nation. And since that time, the emissions reduction strategies employed by the state, including this one, helped reverse that trend so that the days of ozone exceedance in 1994 were once 100 days a year. And now in 2025, it's more like 17 to 20 days a year. So this program does reduce vehicle emissions at the ground level. It is an important environmental program. We do have to raise the cost because the cost of administrating the program has increased over the years. It has been several years since there was an increase in this fee. And for all of those reasons, I ask you to vote red.
Recognizing the maker of the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So you heard that, folks. Only 14 of the 24 jurisdictions in Maryland impact the ozone layer, right? This program is so necessary that 14 of the 24 jurisdictions in Maryland have to do the testing. But it doesn't apply to vehicles that are 25 years old, doesn't apply to vehicles that are within 6 or 7 years old. It just applies to these narrow vehicles, mid-90s, early 2000s in Frederick County. Give me a break. This is a green vote for the poor guy who's got to take off work in his truck, sit in line at the emissions Veep Center for an hour just to have a little machine say, yeah, you're good, when he already has the equipment on his vehicle that monitors that stuff. So I say a green vote's for common sense, a green vote's for affordability, and my God, I don't want to have to explain this to the people when I'm door knocking. I'm going to be voting green on this. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Just wanted to make sure that the delegate knew that you can tell the guy in the truck that he can go 24/7 for self-testing at the emissions testing station and actually get a reduced fee for that. And second, there are 30 states in the country that have this program in place. And it is one of the reasons why we have improved air quality over the years. And for that reason, please vote no.
Recognizing the delegate from Hartford County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Just for the edification of the body, actually, in 1990, we had the Clean Air Act, but we also had in 1995 a reformulated gasoline pass at the federal level, which reduced VOCs, nitrogen oxides. So that is actually why your air is better today. It was a policy that reformulated your gasoline right at that time.
Madam Speaker?
Floor leader again.
Yes, I just wanted to point out that after 1995, we had 1996. And in 1996, that is when we had the federal Clean Air Act amendments that we had to update our system to meet.
Recognizing the gentleman from the Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
I rise to this for this amendment. If I cross the river where I live, I don't need to do this. But because I live in Queen Anne's County, I can go to Caroline. It's still my district, and I don't need to do this. I can walk up the street to Kent, and I don't need to do this. It's just, I appreciate why we might have done it in the past. I think something like this with catalytic converters and all that, and this is not a suggestion that we put them in every county. Please don't take my comments as that, but I find that can happen here. I appreciate why we think we need to do it, but if you don't meet the criteria when you go into a Veep station, you can buy that off by going out there and getting a receipt for what you may or may not have fixed on your car and get a reprieve on it for a little while. I don't think it's really an effective vehicle or tool right now. I think we should ban it. It would be cost saving to the state, and I don't think it'll appreciably affect our air quality. Thank you.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? The clerk will take the call. There being 87 votes in the negative, the amendment fails. Recognizing the gentleman from the Eastern Shore.
I'm not sure whether we saved the best for last or whatever, but I have an amendment at the desk.
Well, let's think in a positive way.
Why don't we trade parties for a day, ma'am?
The glass is half full, is it? Okay.
Amendment number 913729.
Amendment number
1. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a relatively simple amendment in a lot of ways. I think, I don't know whether I was picked for this because of my age or not, but the amendment pretty much reads something for our seniors. It's a repealing of the increases in fishing licenses and stamps for the elderly created in HB 40 of last year. And I just want to take the fees for the fishing and trout stamp licenses back to that figure. $5 for the fishing license, and I think it's, $5 for the trout stamp. I move the amendment.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you to the maker of the amendment. It's good to have one from my old friend in ECM. And I would say first that we don't use the word elderly in the bill, we use senior, which is better on the palate. And also, we did create a senior discount, and we did maintain that senior discount for the licensing fee. And I would just say that this idea could have merit, but I think it is a better suited to go to a policy committee to see whether or not we should, in fact, have senior discounts in our fishing licenses and trout stamps. And I would encourage you to take it to the policy committee. And for that reason, I'd ask the body to vote no on this amendment.
Now, the gentleman, you did not think that appropriations had a sense of humor, did you?
Well, I know she does. The chairman sometimes.
Look, I vouch for my chairman.
Okay. On the amendment, I appreciate the comments about it, but this is a very small group of people who have already paid their dues. These are the people out there. Not everybody has a retirement account, and something as simple and as easy as $22 a year, and we've talked about dollars and cents and what it means to people. I think this is appropriate. I think, keep in mind, these people, they're sitting out there, they're retired, they're doing whatever they can do to try to make a little bit more money, and we have enough expenses out there. I think we'd be doing a nice thing if we could help the seniors out. I move the amendment.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? The clerk will take the call. There being 86 votes in the negative, the amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Recognizing the gentleman from Southern Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
I think this is the last amendment we offer. Amendment number 493222/1.
Amendment number 1.
So be considered reading an amendment.
So order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
So what this amendment is, back when we had a budget surplus a few years ago, we established a program that mirrored the federal program for rental assistance known as Section 8. So we actually have state dollars going into rental assistance. I believe it's about $15 million. And what this amendment would do is establish work requirements, same as in the big beautiful bill for Medicaid, which is actually a little bit more relaxed than what we've had on SNAP for the last 30 years. So I represent people that work hard and their housing payments, rental payments, they're struggling to make. And this amendment is designed to get people out of dependency and back to work. And I feel it's odd that the same budget that we've had that is making changes to DDA and reductions to them, that we wouldn't make reductions to able-bodied people receiving rental assistance. So with that, Madam Speaker, I move the amendment.
Recognizing the chair of the committee. Oh, subcommittee chair, sorry.
Madam Speaker, good afternoon. Thank you to my good friend from Southern Maryland for this amendment and for sharing it in advance. I really appreciate it. I want to start out by saying I think what I heard the gentleman say is that the intent behind this amendment is to promote self-sufficiency, to get people from relying upon public assistance into a position where they can fully afford to live, and pay their rent and pay for all of the things that we need in life on their own. And to do this, you institute a program on our rental assistance programs that would require work requirements akin to what is newly established from H.R. 1, or the Big Beautiful Bill Act, on Medicaid. Did I get that right, sir? Great. Okay, so I want to start out and say that first, this is actually not an entirely new concept. In fact, the Housing and Urban Development Agency at the United States level already has a current notice of proposed rulemaking out for this same existing idea. However, theirs is a little bit different. What it would do is it would expand the ability of local jurisdictions, if they want to expand their current Move to Work program and have work requirements across all local housing authorities if they want. Now, the way that the gentleman's amendment is actually drafted is that it only applies to primarily two types of funds, two programs in our budget. One is the federal Section 8 dollars that we receive that the state manages, not the ones that go to all of the local jurisdictions that already have housing authorities. So the funds that the state manages actually only exclusively impacts rural jurisdictions. And the second primary fund that the gentleman's amendment would affect is a rental program that supports domestic violence victims. So voting yes on this very well-intentioned bill would actually uniquely, disproportionately impact rural jurisdictions and domestic violence victims. Now, if you look at numbers we have on what is happening when you add work requirements in just on SNAP, which is new, that is a new requirement. TCA, our Temporary Cash Assistance Program, has already had it. SNAP and Medicaid will newly adopt it. If you look at some of the estimates of who's going to be newly subjected and potentially as a result could lose eligibility, if you look at different counties, of course, some of the larger counties have some of the larger impact by numbers, but by percentage per capita, it's actually significantly higher in our rural communities, which are already the only ones that this specific amendment impacts. And so for these reasons, I would encourage the body to consider resisting the amendment. Last, I'll say, there's already an existing body of research that's significant that shows that introducing work requirements on public benefit programs has the opposite effect. It doesn't actually do what is intended by the good gentleman's amendment, which is to increase self-sufficiency. In fact, this allowance to have work requirements on Section 8 already exists in a limited number of jurisdictions that are part of the Move to Work program under HUD. And the 1% of those that have adopted work requirements, most of them have actually dropped it because, in fact, they found that it was onerous to apply and did not actually do what was intended, which was increase the ability of people to move into self-sufficiency. And so while the amendment is super well-intentioned, because of the disparate impact on domestic violence victims and rural communities, as well as on, and the ability that we don't actually even have the ability to make this a requirement on our HUD dollars, and the fact that these policies have been adopted in other parts of the country and not yielded the right impact, I would urge the body to resist. Thank you.
Recognizing the maker of the amendment. You're welcome.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I respect the difference of opinion here. But the floor leader said something that really caught my ear. She said lose eligibility. And that's really the problem we have, right? Because people get hooked on these social benefits and they have a hard time getting off because of the fiscal cliff. So we need to have people not be coached into chronic dependency. And I will say this, that we were able to poll some of this prior to session, and 79% of Marylanders, it's 88% of Republicans, 78% of Democrats, 69% of independents, requiring able-bodied adults without young children at home to work, train, volunteer, or be enrolled in an education program, at least part-time in a condition. That polled at 79%. So while this isn't for food stamps, it's for rental assistance, and I would think that the polling for the Maryland public would be somewhat similar. So I'm here to do their will, and I press the amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? The clerk will take the call. There being 91 votes in the negative, the amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading.
Madam Speaker.
I want to, one second, I want to thank everyone for your work this morning, for the civility and the respect. Recognizing the gentleman from Frederick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just, I needed a vote change on Amendment 413129/1 to nay, please. Thank you.
You're welcome. Remember to turn in your yellow slips. Any other vote changes? All right, seeing none. Message from the Senate. And by the way, the Senate was very kind, and they will start at 1:30 to give us time, okay? I want to thank the Senate President and his staff for doing that. Senate bills introduced in the House. The clerk will read the bills and committee assignments.
Senate Bill 283, the President Appropriations by order Sylvia Seeger, Chief Clerk.
Letters of reassignment. The clerk will read the letter.
Senate Bill 40, reassigned to Ways and Means. Senate Bill 301, reassigned to Environment and Transportation. Senate Bill 807, reassigned to Government, Labor, and Elections.
Hearing no objection, the letters are ordered journalized. I want to just remind the body that the panoramic photo, which is actually, I've been here 20 years, I have to say that is, I love it. It's very bright, and you can see our faces very clear. Must be made by this Friday, March the 27th. And by the way, if you haven't seen the funny one, because you can miss it, you should look at the funny one. It is very funny. This ends the work at the desk. Committee announcements.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Appropriations Committee will have bill hearings at 1 o'clock.
And thank you for your work today. Economic Matters.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Economic Matters will not be meeting today, and there will be no subcommittee today as well.
Environment and Transportation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The House Environment and Transportation Committee will not be meeting today. Don't get used to it.
Government, Labor, and Elections. Can you follow that?
No. Lee is not meeting today. Thank you.
All right. Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Health Committee will be meeting for bill hearings at 1 p.m. today.
I could have guessed that. Just kidding. Judiciary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Judiciary Committee will not be meeting today.
Ways and Means.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Ways and Means Committee will meet today for bill hearings at 1:30 p.m.
Health, you're not alone. I used to be you. Subcommittee announcements. Recognizing the delegate from Baltimore City.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, the Capital Budget Subcommittee on Appropriations will meet today in the Appropriations Room at 4 p.m. for capital decisions.
And thank you for your work. Any other subcommittee announcements? Delegation announcement, subcommittee announcement, recognizing the delegate from Howard.
Transportation and Environment Subcommittee meet immediately after bill hearings for 5 minutes in the committee room.
Any other subcommittee announcements? All right, delegation announcements. Seeing none. Caucus announcements, recognizing the chair of the Rural Caucus.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Rural Caucus will have an organizational meeting tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock in the Howard County delegation. Thank you.
You're welcome. Recognizing the chair of the
Chair of the Women's Caucus.
The Women Caucus.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, save the date for this Friday. The Women's Caucus is very proud to collaborate with our Jewish caucus. This Friday, March 27th, we will be honoring Jewish women throughout Maryland for Women's History Month. Much like last year, we are inviting everyone in the General Assembly to stop by after House floor session in Miller Room 1 to learn and honor trailblazing Jewish women over delicious kosher treats. Thank you so much, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome. And you weren't here when we thank the Women's Caucus for dinner. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. That was really good. You can do that. Recognizing the chair of the Black Caucus.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
I want to remind members we have a meeting tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m., room 150 in the Low House Office Building. Look forward to seeing you there. 8:30 a.m. And breakfast will be served.
Thank you. Any other caucus announcements? Seeing none, today's Women History Moment is being offered by the delegate from Prince George's County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to yield to the gentlelady from Frederick.
Recognizing the young lady from Frederick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today, as we celebrate Women's History Month, permission to repeatedly use a great delegate's name?
Permission granted.
I am honored to stand before this body not alone, but alongside my colleague and dear friend, Delegate Tiffany Alston. We rise to honor the ancestors of our political journey, women who proved that a shared vision for our families is more powerful than any partisan divide.
Madam Speaker, permission to repeatedly use the delegate's name?
Permission granted.
That's right, Delegate Miller. We look back to 1977 when 15 trailblazers in the U.S. House of Representatives, led by Elizabeth Holtzman, a Democrat, and Margaret Heckler, a Republican, did the unthinkable. They founded the Congressional Caucus for Women's Issues, known as the Bipartisan Women's Caucus.
And don't forget that there were only 18 women out of 435 members of the U.S. House of Representatives then. 2 of the founding members were from Maryland. Gladys Noon Spellman, a Democrat from the 4th District, a powerhouse from Prince George's County. She was the key architect of the Pregnancy Discrimination Act and fought for women's pension rights. Then the same fiscal accountability that we fight for today. And Barbara Mikulski, a Democrat from the 3rd District, elected in 1976. She was the new face of the movement and would later become the longest-serving woman in the history of the U.S. Congress, a fierce advocate for women's health research. And Delegate Alston, were there any other interesting early members?
Why, yes, a few come to mind, like Shirley Chisholm from New York's 12th District, the first Black woman elected to Congress. In addition to being a Women's Caucus founding member, she was also a founding member of the Congressional Black Caucus and the first woman to seek a major party nomination for president. The third Maryland member was Margaret Holt, a Republican from the 4th District. She was the first Republican woman elected to Congress from Maryland. After the creation of the Women's Caucus in April of 1977, Holt initially declined to join the Congressional Caucus of Women's Issues. In order to gain her membership, in order to gain the membership of all women in Congress, the co-chairs Elizabeth Holtzman and Margaret Heckler convinced Holt to join the caucus in 1979 by assuring her that members would be allowed to ally or distance themselves from the caucus as they saw politically fit. In addition, moreover, the caucus would not publicly endorse any issue that was not agreed to unanimously.
Yes, her presence in the group ensured that women's issues weren't just seen as an urban or liberal agenda, but as a concern for suburban and rural Maryland families. These women didn't just check their principles at the door, they simply realized that on issues like pregnancy discrimination, credit equality, civil rights, and child care, they weren't Democrats or Republicans first. They were champions for women. They showed us that when women lead together, we don't just talk about policy, we pass it.
The Bipartisan Women's Caucus has a historic track record of moving legislation that transforms the daily lives of American women by focusing on the role equality. Issues like economic fairness, health, where both parties could find common ground, they passed landmark laws that are now the bedrock of women's rights. Can you think of any?
The Pregnancy Discrimination Act in 1978, that was the caucus's first major win. It prohibited employers from firing or discriminating against women due to pregnancy or childbirth, treating it as a temporary disability. Any more?
There was the Equal Credit Opportunity Act of 1974 and 1977, where the initial act passed in 74, the caucus was instrumental in strengthening its enforcement, ensuring that women could open a bank account or mortgage and credit cards without having a male cosigner.
Then there was the Retirement Equity Act, 1984. This law lowered the age of pension participation and ensured that a spouse, usually the wife, would not lose pension benefits if their partner died, providing vital security for widows.
There was the Civil Rights Restoration Act of 1987. It passed in 88, which was landmark federal law that mandated any institution receiving federal funds must comply with civil rights laws in all of its operations, not just the specific program.
And it wasn't just about agreeing to disagree. It was drafting ironclad legislation that forced the entire federal government to respect the rights of women in every classroom and on every playing field in America. There was also the Family Medical Leave Act of 93. The caucus was the primary engine behind this bill for nearly a decade, eventually securing the right for workers to take unpaid, job-protected leave for family and medical reasons.
There was also the Violence Against Women Act of 1994, a watershed moment for the caucus. This provided the first comprehensive federal response to domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking.
The Child Support Enforcement Act of 1992. Do we really need to explain that?
It keeps me employed. In 1988, the Women Business Owners Act established women business centers and removed the requirement for women to have male relatives co-sign their business loans.
And then we had the Pump Act of 2022, and that expanded the right for nursing mothers to have time and private space to pump breast milk at work.
Do not get the two of us started on women and maternal health, because we'd be here all day, and I know we've been here long enough. Cancer, as our speaker always says, does not care if you are a Democrat or a Republican, and so they've done a lot of work in that area as well.
And in the 119th Congress, the torch is carried by co-chairs Monica De La Cruz, a Republican from Texas, and Amelia Strong Sykes, a Democrat from Ohio. These women prove every day that bipartisan isn't a buzzword, it's a work ethic.
We see a mirror of the national bipartisanship in our own friendship right here in Annapolis. Over paper, Delegate Miller and I couldn't be more different. She represents the breathtaking hills of Frederick, and I represent gorgeous Prince George's vibrant communities. One of us is a conservative voice, the other a progressive advocate. We'll let you decide who's who. But in the quiet of the lounge, in the intensity of committee work, and in the shared moments of motherhood and service, we found something more important than a party flat platform. We found true friendship. Wouldn't you agree, Delegate Miller?
Absolutely. Meeting on the freshman bus tour, establishing the ball gown caucus, it is our friendship that allows us to freely debate, laugh until we cry, have meaningful conversations, and support each other as we navigate this often stressful world of policymaking. We do not always agree, but we value each other's perspective and we learn from each other. Just like the National Bipartisan Women's Caucus, we focus on kitchen table issues that unite women.
The Federal Women's Caucus is a model of truly shared bipartisan leadership. Every Women's Caucus should be a safe harbor, a place where we can disagree on the details but remain united in the dignity and future of women and girls.
And in the spirit of bipartisan sisterhood, we hope you have enjoyed your bipartisan Women's History moment. We
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Personal or guest announcements?
Madam Speaker,
Recognizing the delegate from Montgomery County.
I want to acknowledge my dear cousin, Harriet Ganson, who's up in the gallery with her friend Marjorie Davidson, who's watched us debate the budget today. Thank you for being here, Cousin Harriet.
Thank you for being here. Recognizing the delegate from Prince George's.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. A couple of days ago, you might have heard me announce that I have the Be Kind sign in the lounge. I also have it in the lounge today. But permission to use the delegate name?
Permission granted.
I have two constituents here who is from Delegate April Rose area, who goes all over the state of Maryland promoting the sign, and also the carpenter of the sign, which is Eric Miller and his wife Tina Miller, who's above you, stand up, who came all the way from Carroll County just to say thank you for taking a picture with the Be Kind sign, and thank you for your leadership, Madam Speaker, in reference to being kind, and we all have been kind here, and that's what the world needs. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Recognizing the delegate from Prince George's in the red.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, today we have, I'm not sure if they're in the gallery because I can't see the gallery behind me, but we have members of the Prince George's County Democratic Central Committee
They're here.
who are here.
Yes.
Well, wonderful. If they're
Can
here,
you rise,
they can
please?
stand so they can be recognized. Thank you. So
Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for the work you do. We appreciate you. Recognizing the other delegate from Prince George's. Okay, it was the same. All right. Recognizing the delegate from Frederick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Please welcome our office shadow, Thomas Kelly. He was a page for the Senate earlier in session and loved it so much he came back to shadow my office for the day. I think he realized how much more entertaining we are in the House. He's a senior at Walkersville High School and plans to study business in college. Thank you for sharing the day with us, Thomas.
Welcome. Any other personal guest announcement? Recognizing the delegate from Baltimore County.
Sorry, not very exciting. SB 284, amendment number 913729 to red, please.
Okay. All right. Make sure to turn in your yellow slip. Any other personal guest announcements? Let's do quorum call.
Madam Speaker?
Anyone from the back? If you will be so kind and come back. All right. Has everyone recorded their presence? The clerk would take the call. There being 128 members present, the House is still in session. Recognizing the majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Dear colleagues, I regret to inform you that I move that the House stands adjourned until Thursday, March 26 at 9:00 a.m. Legislative date, March 13th.
Thank you. 9 a.m. All right? Enjoy your day.